Chapter 16:25 Sword of Mortality. Suddenly a sea bellowed out. As he formed a sword seal with his hands, the metal sword in his hand levitated into the air and erupted with powerful sword chi. Immediately, the metal sword shone with blinding light, as if it had become a scorching sun. The metal sword that was only a meter long also expanded at that moment, becoming over 10 meters long. It seemed like a divine sword that stabbed into the ground. Sword of reincarnation. At this moment, Sen also bellowed out like a sea. As he formed a sword seal with his hands, the metal sword in his hand shone brightly as well. It shone with extremely powerful sword chi, and the metal sword instantly grew to over 10 meters long. Sword of slaying. Immediately afterwards, air did the same as a sea and a Sen. The 4-foot-long metal swords in their hands all changed as they used their sword techniques. The 3 10-meter-long metal swords shone with a dazzling light like the sun. They were incomparably resplendent as they interweaved in a triangular formation. It was as if they were calling out to each other from afar, causing their power to faintly fuse into one. A air, a Sen, and a sea were also enveloped by an extremely powerful sword chi, causing their figures to become blurry. However, it was possible to vaguely make out a blurry strand of sword chi that flickered from time to time within their bodies. It possessed a profound presence. The 3 strands of sword chi seemed to possess similar presences, but upon closer inspection, it was not difficult to distinguish the 3 strands of sword chi. They all had their own forms and were subtly different. Every single strand of sword chi possessed an extremely profound presence. However, the presence was extremely weak and indistinct, so it was extremely difficult for others to sense it. I can't actually devour your life force anymore. Impossible, impossible. You're just food as weak as ants. So how can I not devour you? The evil spirit cried out in shock. At that moment, it discovered in shock that it was unable to devour the life force of an air, a Sen, and a sea under the 3 strands of sword chi even when it used its full strength. At the same time, it sensed a threat from the 3 of them. The threat was nowhere near as great as the one from Genshin and the Spirit King, but for some reason it made it shiver in fear. It had to be mentioned that it had never felt this way even when it faced the primordial god Silk. My instincts are becoming stronger and stronger. As long as I devour you, I'll receive great benefits. Opportunity and danger exist together. Who cares? I'm undying anyway. Even if I have to pay a great price, I'll devour you. However, the evil spirit completely ignored the threat it sensed from an air, a Sen, and a Sen. It made up its mind to devour the 4 of them regardless of the price it had to pay. The evil spirit's red mist immediately began to revolve rapidly, forming a huge whirlpool that enveloped the 4 of them. Immediately, an even more powerful suction appeared. At the same time, the red mist transformed into 4 huge claws that reached toward the 4 of them in an attempt to destroy the protective light around the 3 of them. Sword of vanquishing. When the sharp claws formed by Hong Wu reached over, Ada let out a final roar. He flew above the heads of the other 3 and stood in the middle of them. He raised his right hand above his head and pointed his sword at the sky, forming a sword formation. Immediately, a air, a Sen, and a sea's powers all gathered toward Ada. At that moment, the 4 of them entered an extremely special state. Not only had their powers completely fused together, but even their vital energies and the tremendous vitality they had gained from breaking through to the origin realm had all fused together as well, allowing them to become even more powerful. Initial fusion of the 4 swords reopened the world. The 4 of them called out together as they swung their metal swords at the same time. The moment the 4 swords slashed down, the world seemed to have come to a standstill. Time seemed to have stopped flowing. In the entire world, only the 4 swords continued to slash forward with an unstoppable momentum, becoming the only thing in the world. As the 4 swords slashed down, even the laws of the world were pushed back. It was as if the four swords had the mysterious power to slash apart the laws of the world at this moment. This was not because the four swords were powerful or shocking. After all, the four of them had only just broken through to receival. With their strength at early receival, it was impossible for them to reach a heaven-defying level even if they fused their powers together. The reason why their attacks were so powerful was because of the presence of ways within the four swords. As the four swords swung down, the expressions of Jianqin, the Spirit King, and even the several dozen origin realm experts in the sky changed slightly. This was because they could clearly sense that the world seemed to have changed slightly. However, what shocked them even more was that they could clearly sense that the time in the world seemed to have come to a standstill. Even though it was only for a single moment, it was enough to shock all of them. In particular, Jianqin and the Spirit King, the two sovereigns who had reached godhood, felt their hearts churn. Disbelief filled their faces, just like how the higher one stood, the further one could see. The two of them understood extremely well just how heaven-defying it was to affect the time in the world. It was impossible to do unless one was extremely powerful. Even with their current strength, it was impossible for them to cause the time in the world to come to a standstill for a single moment. This was because they had not frozen space. Freezing space would cause everything to come to a standstill. On the surface, it seemed like time had come to a standstill, but it was not truly a standstill. It was just an illusion. In reality, if they were to seal up an entire region and cause everything to come to a standstill, time would still silently flow and the laws of the world would still silently circulate. However, in that moment, time had truly come to a standstill. Even though it was only for a very short moment, they could clearly sense it. This is the presence of the Nirvana sword formation. Impossible, this is impossible. How can the four of them use such a high-level sword formation? And with their strength, it's impossible for them to use it, even if they do. Not only did they succeed in one try, but they did it so quickly as well. Xing and Qingsuo both cried out from within the twin swords. In the supreme divine hall of Mercenary City, the white-robed Kea lay in a crystal coffin quietly with her eyes closed. Suddenly, her eyelashes trembled gently as if she was trying her best to open her eyes, but she was unable to do so no matter what. In the end, she fell silent once again. A fist-sized beast lay beside the crystal coffin. It was the seven-colored, heaven-devouring beast. It had always stood guard before the crystal coffin in the past few years, never taking a single step away from it. Even when a great battle occurred outside, it did not take part. At this moment, the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast's eyes suddenly snapped open. They flickered with an intelligent light, indicating that it possessed very high intelligence. It stared at the outside as it became stern. There was also a sliver of fear and dread. As a divine beast, its instincts were extremely sharp. It felt a sliver of dread from the bottom of its heart when an ability that could affect the time of an entire world erupted outside. The elven god tree suddenly began to gently sway in the forbidden grounds of the elves on the wasteland continent. A faint, green light permeated the surroundings, filled with a tremendous presence of life. The slumbering soul of the greatest divine king of the god clan, Aladona, was suddenly roused at that moment. Who is affecting the time of the entire world? Aladona's voice was also filled with shock. The senses of her soul rapidly expanded, enveloping the entire world in a single instance. She understood everything. An evil spirit. I never thought that an evil spirit would be born in this world. Who are those four people? They're actually able to use such a heaven-defying ability as receival experts? This is unbelievable. Although they can affect the time of an entire world through powerful abilities, the more powerful the ability, the greater the requirement on the user's strength. Chapter 16:26. Adriana murmured softly. She became very interested in Ada and the other three, but I might be wrong as well. The four of them might not be the reincarnations of some supreme expert from the saints' world, like I thought them to be. The reason why they can use such heaven-defying abilities might be because they have something else to rely on. Jianqin sighed. Aladona's interest in the four of them immediately plummeted when she thought of that. I never thought that this human kid called Jianqin would grow so quickly. His current strength is probably equivalent to early deity. I can sense that his comprehension of laws is quite impressive. In the saints' world, countless people of the origin realm are stuck at the peak of reciprocity, unable to reach godhood because of their inability to comprehend laws. Even with the entire saints' world in perspective, anyone who can comprehend laws before reaching peak reciprocity is a prodigy. But basically all prodigies of large clans and sects who can reach Jianqin's level of comprehension of laws before reaching peak reciprocity are prodigies of large clans and sections. Once someone like that becomes a divine king, they'll definitely become a divine king if nothing goes wrong. If Jianqin doesn't die, his future is limitless. Aladona sighed in amazement inside. She had an extremely high opinion of Jianqin. There's another person who's extraordinary as well. He's no weaker than Jianqin, except he seems to have the bloodline of the Spirit Sages. The Spirit Sages are a large clan in the saints' world, but now... Aladona sighed gently. It's said that evil spirits are extremely difficult to destroy. They're basically indestructible existences. It's said that countless years ago, an evil spirit reached an extremely heaven-defying level where several Grand Primes were unable to deal with it even when they worked together. In the end, they alarmed the Anata Grand Prime. Although the evil spirit was nowhere near the Anata Grand Prime's opponent, the Anata Grand Prime still expended a tremendous amount of effort to destroy the evil spirit. I wonder if they can destroy the evil spirit that has appeared in this world right now. It's a pity that even though I'm the greatest divine king of the God clan, I'm unable to help them in my current state. Fortunately, Shui Yunlan has already left, and the seal on the spatial tunnel to the saints' world has been removed. Although I'm still unable to pass through the spatial tunnel to the saints' world unscathed with my current strength, if they can't stop the evil spirit, I'll leave with the war god even if I have to suffer heavy injuries. Aladona remained rooted in the forbidden grounds of the elves. Although she did not take part in the battle, she paid close attention to everything that happened on the battlefield. When the senses of Aladona's soul swept over the Tian Yuan continent, Jianqin and the Spirit King seemed to sense it at the same time. Jianqin was not surprised. He already knew about the existence of Aladona, the greatest divine king of the God clan. However, the Spirit King was surprised. He stared in the direction of the elves on the wasteland continent in interest as undisguised shock filled his face. He knew very well just how powerful the consciousness that had just swept over him was. It was just a consciousness, but it made him feel like he was facing the heavens and earth. In front of this consciousness, he was like a weak ant. Jianqin, I believe you've sensed it as well. Who is it? I never thought that such a terrifying expert would be hidden in this world. The Spirit King asked Jianqin secretly. He was extremely stern. It's a divine king from the saints' world. However, she was heavily injured in the past and still hasn't recovered. Don't worry about her. She won't interfere with the matters of this world. At the same time, she probably doesn't even have the strength to interfere with the problems we're facing right now because she's already lost her body. All that's left is her soul and the divine tree of life condensed from tremendous vitality, Jianqin replied. A divine king. The Spirit King's face changed slightly. He immediately felt his mouth dry up. The divine king was an existence who had reached the very apex of godhood. Although the Spirit King possessed the battle prowess of an early deity, his original cultivation was still at reciprocity. The divine king was just too far away from him. I never thought that your world would actually have a divine king hidden in it. This is unbelievable. The Spirit King sighed in amazement. Hearing that, Jianqin smiled mysteriously. We originally had 2 divine kings here. The other divine king is even more powerful. The divine king whose soul you've sensed was injured by the other divine king. It's a pity that the other divine king has already left this world and has gone to the saints' world. The spirit king sucked in a deep breath. Genshin's news was just too shocking to him. It was no different from a bomb exploding in his heart, causing it to churn. Whether it was the spirit king or Genshin, the divine king was an unreachable existence. They were so powerful that they could not be defeated. Even if only one of them was left with a soul, it would be enough to shock everyone, let alone the fact that there was a second divine king. Moreover, the second divine king was even more powerful, which deeply shocked the spirit king. Who are you? What kind of power is this? It's actually so terrifying. A slightly frightened mental pulse reverberated in the surroundings, reaching everyone's ears. At the same time, it interrupted Genshin and the Spirit King's thoughts. The presence of the evil spirit that had turned into a huge whirlpool rapidly declined. Very soon, it fell to mid-reciprocity, early reciprocity, and then all the way down to reciprocity. However, the evil spirit did not stop there. After falling to reciprocity, its strength continued to decline irreversibly. It reached late returnance, mid-returnance, and finally stabilized at early returnance. Although the four of them were only at early receival, the sword formation they cast together was just too powerful. It directly reduced the evil spirit's strength from late reciprocity to early returnance. The evil spirit was originally extremely powerful. Even when Genshin and the Spirit King worked together, they were not its opponent. However, the evil spirit's strength was nowhere near as great as before due to the continuous injuries it had suffered throughout the battle. This was because the red mist was its original form. Every bit of the mist dispersed would weaken it. The four of them had dispersed most of the mist with their attacks, which was why its strength had plummeted so drastically. The four of them all became extremely pale after casting the powerful sword formation. They were haggard and seemed extremely weak. Clearly, they had paid a price to cast the sword formation. Chapter 16:27. This was because as its strength declined, it would struggle to move faster than Genshin, and the Spirit King, even if it used its ability to fold space to flee. The distance it could travel was directly related to its strength. Genshin, it's up to you now, Ada said to Genshin through a communication technique. His voice was extremely weak. He was powerless to continue fighting. A gleam of light flashed through Genshin's eyes. He shot through the air as a blur, arriving before the evil spirit with lightning speed. He directly stabbed at the red mist. Only resplendent, white sword chi flickered with the strike. The sword chi was completely concealed, not leaking out at all to avoid damaging the Tianyuan continent from the shockwaves. The azure and violet light had completely vanished as well. Genshin could sense that Adriana's soul had always been observing the surroundings. In order to prevent the identity of the twin swords from being exposed, the unique light of the twin swords was completely concealed as well. Not a single strand of light leaked out. Although he knew that not every divine king knew the identity of the twin swords, he still needed to be cautious. The Ziying sword stabbed into the red mist with powerful sword chi, immediately causing the mist to churn violently. Genshin's strike was not his full strength, but it had barely reached the level of godhood. Wherever the sword passed, the red mist in the surroundings would disperse, and the evil spirit's strength would decline once again, falling from early returnance to receival. When the evil spirit's strength was close to Genshin's, or even greater than Genshin's attacks would not be able to inflict any heavy injuries on it. With its strength, it would be able to endure them easily. However, as the evil spirit's strength rapidly declined, it gradually found it more and more difficult to endure Genshin's attacks. Basically, every time Genshin struck out, he would heavily injure the evil spirit, causing its strength to rapidly decline. At the same time, the god-slaying formation finally arrived. It rapidly descended from the sky and enveloped the evil spirit, heavily injuring it with god-slaying sword chi. The Spirit King returned from outer space as well. He and Jianqin each took up a different area and began to deal with the evil spirits with their full strength. However, the two of them were just too powerful right now. They could attack without any fear in outer space. But on the Tianyuan continent, they had to be careful every time they attacked in order to avoid causing great damage to the continent. They kept all of their energy contained. They did not dare to leak even a single strand of their energy. Under the encirclement, the evil spirit was unable to devour the four of them at all. At the same time, its strength weakened time and time again under the encirclement. In the end, it actually fell out of the origin realm and stood a sainthood. Jianqin charged into the red mist as well and saved the four people trapped inside, saving them from danger. "You food can't kill me. I'm undying. No one can kill me," the evil spirit roared. The evil spirit roared out wildly. After falling below Saint, it no longer had any hope of escaping. However, it was filled with resentment. If it were not for the fact that it wanted to devour the four of them in a hurry to obtain great benefits, it would not have ended up like this. Not only did it fail to devour them in a crucial moment, but the four of them even managed to break through. "Remove the god-slaying formation. Let me and the Spirit King deal with it," Jianqin said sternly. The evil spirit was equivalent to a saint emperor now, so there was no need for the god-slaying formation anymore. If the formation continued to exist, it would even cause him and the Spirit King to feel rather restricted. Without any hesitation, the origin realm experts of the two worlds immediately removed the god-slaying formation. As soon as the formation vanished, Jianqin immediately controlled the primordial god silkworm to trap the evil spirit, preventing it from escaping. The red mist of the evil spirit constantly darted around within the primordial god silkworm in an attempt to escape. However, it no longer possessed the ability to break free from the primordial god silkworm. Under the full-powered attacks of Jianqin and the Spirit King, its strength plummeted again very quickly, falling to the mortal realm. The red mist vanished as well, revealing the evil spirit's core. It was a ball of red liquid the size of a fist. It was as demonic as blood and emitted an extremely cold and evil aura. This was the source of the evil spirit. Only by destroying this source would the evil spirit be truly destroyed. Jianqin directly swung his sword at the core of the evil spirit through a gap in the primordial god silkworm. The sword passed through the core. Not only did it fail to cut the core in half, but it did not weaken the core at all either. It was as if the attack had failed to harm the core at all. Jianqin's eyes narrowed when he saw this. The Spirit King's face changed slightly as well. He also swung his sword, but the result was the same as Jianqin's. The cloud stream sword passed through the core and failed to harm the evil spirit's core. "You can't kill me. I am an undying existence." A thought rippled out from the origin source, along with the evil spirit's arrogant laughter. There was some mockery mixed in as well, as if it was mocking the experts who were only food in its eyes for overestimating their strength. Jianqin's face sank. With a cold snort, he used martial soul force with his soul at reciprocity. Immediately, a unique power completely formed from the power of the soul appeared. The power was shapeless and did not harm the body. It targeted the soul, and under Jianqin's control, it shot toward the evil spirit as a sharp sword. Although Jianqin had yet to comprehend a method to push the power of martial soul force to its limits, his soul had reached reciprocity after all. As a result, a unique pressure immediately permeated the surroundings when he used martial soul force. The expressions of the origin realm experts of the two worlds all changed when they faced the pressure. At that moment, they discovered in shock that their souls had been suppressed by the invisible pressure. Even though the pressure did not target them, basically all the receival experts among them could clearly sense the deep fear from their souls. It was as if the pressure was directed at them, their souls would immediately suffer unprecedented damage or even disperse slightly. The pressure threatened all the receival experts present. Only the returnance experts were able to maintain their composure. Of course, if the pressure was targeted at them, they would feel the same as the receival experts. Martial soul force was an extremely powerful power, so powerful that it was enough to strike fear into the hearts of many people in the Saints' world. This was because once martial soul force was used, it could basically kill experts of the same level instantly. Even experts more powerful than them would be heavily injured by martial soul force. However, Jianqin had yet to grasp the method to use martial soul force, so he was unable to push it to its limits. As a result, martial soul force could only threaten people weaker than him with the strength of his soul at reciprocity. Chapter 16:28. Although the evil spirit had its own consciousness, it was not a normal creature after all. It was an extremely special existence where the laws of the world could not do anything to it. Destroying it was impossible with normal methods. The weakened evil spirit had completely lost its ability to escape. It was firmly trapped by the primordial god Silk. Afterwards, Jianchen and the Spirit King tried many other methods to destroy the evil spirit, but the evil spirit's core seemed to be as it said. It was an undying existence. No matter what attacks Jianchen and the Spirit King used, they could only disperse the evil spirit's energy. They were unable to harm its core. Master, it said that only the primordial god Silk can nullify the crisis of the world. If you want to destroy it, you'll need the primordial god Silk's power. At this moment, the sword spirit's voices rang out in Jianchen's head. Jianchen immediately felt bitter. He had considered using the primordial god Silk to destroy the evil spirit long ago. But now that the primordial god Silk had been split into two, the power within it had basically been depleted. The remaining bit of power was only enough to trap the evil spirit. It was nowhere near enough to destroy it. He had also tried channeling his chaotic force into the primordial god Silk, but the effects were not satisfactory. Even if he channeled all his chaotic force into the primordial god Silk, it was nowhere near enough to destroy the evil spirit. According to his estimates, even if the Spirit King, all the origin realm experts of the two worlds, and all the sainthood experts worked together, they would not be able to destroy the evil spirit. The power of divinity was an extremely special type of energy. It was of a very high grade. Saint force and origin energy seemed far too weak before it, so the amount required to convert it into divinity was obviously extremely terrifying. Is it really impossible to kill the evil spirit? Jianchen murmured. His heart was very heavy. The Spirit King's face was sunken as well. He stared fixedly at the origin of the evil spirit, trapped by the primordial god Silk. He also discovered that they were unable to do anything to the evil spirit. Since I can't destroy it, it looks like I can only suppress this evil spirit forever. I'll find a way to destroy it once I become stronger in the future. I'll seal it in the Inata Tower with the primordial god Silk, so it should be safe. Jianchen thought, right now, the greatest divine king of the god clan, Aladona, was paying attention. He really did not want to expose the Inata Tower at a time like this. After all, the Inata Tower was what had made the Inata Grand Prime famous. Its power was unquestionable. Even though it was damaged, he believed that there would be countless experts in the Saints' world who would be willing to risk their lives for the Inata Tower, regardless of the cost. Once Aladona leaked the fact that he possessed the Inata Tower in the Saints' world, he would never be able to find peace again. However, the remaining power of the primordial god Silk was diminishing right now. It could only trap the evil spirit for a shorter and shorter period of time. He needed to suppress the evil spirit before the primordial god Silk ran out of power. Jianchen had no confidence in using the methods of the Tian Yuan continent and the Saints' world. He could only think of two places to suppress the evil spirit. One was the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City, while the other was the Inata Tower. Although the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City was in perfect condition, it was nowhere near as good as the damaged Inata Tower in terms of quality. Jianchen was not too confident about using the Supreme Divine Hall as a place to suppress the evil spirit. He was afraid that even the Supreme Divine Hall would not be able to trap the evil spirit, so the most suitable method was the Inata Tower. After making up his mind, Jianchen no longer cared about whether the Inata Tower would be exposed or not. He directly took out the Inata Tower in an attempt to suppress the evil spirit within. The Inata Tower was a foot tall in Jianchen's hand. Even though it had shrunk in size, the strands of sharp sword qi that covered it remained. Every single strand of sword qi shone brightly, radiating with shocking sword intent. However, there were 4 strands of sword qi at the very top of the Inata Tower that were dim. They seemed rather unique compared to the dazzling sword qi below. The moment the Inata Tower appeared, the 4 brothers who were supported by the Holy Emperor seemed to sense something. They all looked at the Inata Tower in Jianchen's hand, and their dull eyes immediately lit up. Without any exception, all 4 of them stared at the dim sword slashes at the very top of the Inata Tower. Their eyes were all in a daze. A mysterious force seemed to draw them in from there. At the same time, the 4 of them found it to be extremely familiar, yet also unfamiliar. The damaged door to the first floor of the Inata Tower had already been opened. A powerful suction enveloped the evil spirit, pulling away from its core and drawing it towards the Inata Tower. The evil spirit's core trembled violently as it did its best to resist the suction. It had an extremely ill omen. It could not be sucked into the Inata Tower. Although the Inata Tower was damaged, it still felt terrified when it faced it. However, it was just far too weak right now. It was unable to resist Jianchen's Inata Tower at all. Under the restraints of the primordial god Silk, its core approached the Inata Tower bit by bit. "My food, you forced me to do this. Come out, my second power. Make the food tremble. Tremble." The evil spirit roared out anxiously. It was filled with determination. With its voice, an extremely huge spatial crack suddenly appeared in outer space. Inside the crack was a blood-red world that shone with a demonic red light. There was also a cold, extremely evil presence that came from the same source as the evil spirit. Jianchen and the Spirit King's faces changed drastically when they saw this. Disbelief filled their eyes. With their eyesight, they could obviously tell that all the energy hidden in the spatial crack was the evil spirit's energy, and the energy was so powerful that it was comparable to the evil spirit's peak condition. This is impossible. Jianchen and the Spirit King became rather pale. All the Origin Realm experts and Sainthood experts of the 2 worlds were filled with despair as well. At its peak condition, the evil spirit was so powerful that it was undefeatable. If it were not for the fact that it had destroyed the primordial god Silk by blowing itself up and causing its strength to plummet, it would have been impossible for Jianchen and the Spirit King to suppress the evil spirit. Just when they were about to suppress the evil spirit and achieve victory, they never thought that the evil spirit would still be hiding such a powerful force. Despair filled both Jianchen and the Spirit King's hearts. Once the evil spirit regained its peak condition, they would not be able to contend against it anymore. After all, the primordial god Silk had basically been crippled, and the Spirit King had paid a heavy price to use the second move of that splits the heavens. He was unable to unleash his peak condition. We can't let this energy descend. A sliver of determination and madness appeared in Jianchen's eyes. He frantically powered the Inata Tower without any regard for the consequences. He wanted to suck the evil spirit into the tower. However, ever since the spatial crack had appeared, the evil spirit seemed to have become connected with the tremendous energy inside. Jianchen was unable to suck the evil spirit into the Inata Tower, no matter what he did. It was as if he was not only absorbing the evil spirit's core energy, but also the tremendous, evil energy within the spatial crack. It was not that the Inata Tower was not powerful enough, but that he was not powerful enough. After all, the energy within the spatial crack was far greater than Jianchen's strength. "I've absorbed the energy from the 2 rocks, but I'm still unable to fuse them completely. At the same time, I'm unable to control two such great powers at the same time with the strength of my consciousness. Chapter 16:29. Whether it was the people from the world of Forsaken Saints or the Tian Yuan continent, whether they were sainthood experts or origin realm experts, all became rather pale with the evil spirit's words. There were even many people who became filled with despair. Even Jianqin and the Spirit King became extremely stern. Their sunken eyes were filled with shock, disbelief, and a sliver of despair. They had never thought that they would only be able to destroy half of the evil spirit's power after expending so much effort and paying such a great price. It actually had the other half, which it could not control right now. It had split off a portion of its power and hid it in a miniature world with a sliver of its soul. It was equivalent to a clone. However, the second portion of power was as powerful as the evil spirit's peak condition. Once the evil spirit fused with the second portion of power, it would return to its peak condition. Even if Jianqin and the Spirit King worked together, they would not be able to defeat the evil spirit in such a state. Not to mention, the primordial god silk that specialized in suppressing evil spirits had basically lost its effects now. The primordial god silk no longer posed any threat to the evil spirit as its power flowed away. Could it be that all of us are going to die under the great calamity of this world? Jianqin was filled with sorrow. His and the Spirit King's strength in this world had completely exceeded the limits of the lower world. They possessed the battle prowess of godhood. Logically speaking, it should have been extremely easy for them to fend off the crisis of the world with their strength and the primordial god silk. However, the crisis this time had become unprecedentedly powerful due to the existence of the Yin-Yang Saint Rock. It had surpassed all the previous crises that had appeared in the lower world in countless years, which was why they were helpless against the crisis of the world. It still hasn't recovered its strength. We can't let it fuse with the other energy, or we'll have no hope at all. We have to stop it from fusing with the other energy, no matter the cost, the Spirit King growled. Stop it, Jianqin murmured. He looked at the huge crack in outer space and became extremely stern. Originally, he wanted to suck the evil spirit's core into the Anata Tower to suppress it. But ever since the evil spirit's second portion of power had appeared in outer space, the evil spirit had established a wondrous connection with it. As a result, he was unable to suck the evil spirit into the Anata Tower. We can't stop it anymore. The only thing we can do now is destroy the core of the crisis of the world before the two of them fuse, Jianqin said sternly. Destroy it? But we've done everything we can, and we can't even harm its core, let alone destroy it. The Spirit King was stern. Once the evil spirit fused with the second portion of power, it would not just be the Tian Yuan continent that would be destroyed. Even the world of Forsaken Saints would not be spared. There's one last method. Even though it's still unable to destroy the core of the crisis of the world, we've already run out of options. Regardless of whether it succeeds or not, we have to try the last method, even if it'll heavily injure its core, because we have no other choice now, Jianqin said sternly. Under the Spirit King's doubtful gaze, Jianqin controlled the primordial god Silk with his mind. The primordial god Silk that had trapped the core of the evil spirit suddenly elongated at that moment before shooting off into the distance with unbelievable speed. It vanished into the horizon in a single instant. As it extended, the golden thread seemed to become the trunk of a tree. It constantly sprouted, and in just a few seconds, it seemed to have become an extremely huge net, enveloping the entire Tian Yuan continent. However, it did not stop there. After enveloping the entire continent, it continued to spread toward the sea realm, the beast god continent, and the wasteland continent. In the end, even the continents of the three races were enveloped by the net. At that very moment, if one were to look at the planet from outer space, they would discover that the entire planet was covered by a layer of golden net. The net had practically filled every corner of the planet. It was completely airtight, especially in some of the more populated cities. The golden threads that formed the huge, Net even ran through every street and alley. However, after the primordial god silk had enveloped the entire world, the limited amount of power within it had completely vanished. It had been completely depleted, leaving nothing behind. The core of the evil spirit began to tremble at that moment. Now that the primordial god silk had been completely depleted, it posed no threat to the evil spirit at all. At this moment, determination filled Jianshan's eyes. He tightly grabbed a golden thread in front of him with his right hand, and the chaotic force within him began to surge. He poured it into the primordial god silk without holding back at all, where it was converted into power. Everyone, pour all your origin energy and saint force into the golden thread. This is the last thing we can do. Even if we can't destroy the crisis of the world, we have to heavily injure it. Even if we can't avoid death today, we have to make the crisis suffer before we die. Jianshan's voice boomed through the surroundings. Not only did it reverberate through the sky above the Tianyuan continent, but even the distant beast god continent, the continent of 100 races, and the sea realm clearly echoed through the entire world. Many Earth Saint Masters and Heaven Saint Masters on the Tianyuan continent raised their heads and gazed in the direction of the voice. They became extremely stern. A few of them who possessed some background already knew a few secrets. When they saw the golden thread that had basically enveloped the entire world, they realized that the situation on the front lines had probably reached an extremely terrible state. It was so terrible that they had to borrow the power of people who had not reached sainthood yet. At this moment, many people slowly grabbed the golden thread with heavy hearts. Without any hesitation, they poured all of their saint force into the golden thread without holding back at all. Of course, there were a few Heaven Saint Masters and Earth Saint Masters who had no idea what was going on. However, the booming voice seemed to possess an unquestionable will. They could not help but feel the urge to disobey when they heard the voice. They could not help but grab the golden thread and contribute all of their strength. Chapter 1630. Among them, there were a few people with strong willpower who were not affected by Jianshan's voice. There were also some people who stared blankly at the golden strands that had suddenly appeared in front of them, not knowing what to do. But soon after, a gentle sound of a zither rang out, and these people who had yet to make a move immediately became dazed. They then mechanically grabbed onto the golden strands with their hands and poured in their saint force without holding back. Not only did this happen across the Tianyuan continent, but even the cultivators on the Wasteland continent, Beast God continent, Sea Realm, and many other islands contributed their own power. They channeled all of their power into the primordial god Silk, which was then rapidly converted into divine energy. In outer space, the large crack in space continued to expand. The evil power hidden within it turned into a blood cloud and slowly left the large crack. It slowly moved towards the evil spirit source. At this rate, the evil spirit source would probably merge with its second source of power in a few breaths' time. Fortunately, this second power was only controlled by a portion of the evil spirit soul. This portion of the evil spirit soul was still unable to use such a large amount of power to fight. Thus, this second power could only unleash its full power after fusing with the evil spirit's core. On the battlefield, all the sainthood experts, and even the origin realm experts, rapidly paled. They had already channeled their saint force and origin energy into the primordial god Silk as quickly as possible, so they became weaker and weaker as a large amount of energy was drained away. With the support of such a tremendous amount of energy, the primordial god Silk actually began to glow again. At the same time as more and more saint force and origin energy were converted into divine force, the primordial god Silk shone with more and more resplendent light. It became more and more dazzling until it turned into a scorching sun that illuminated the entire world. No, no! Why has this god-damned power appeared again? I hate this power. I hate this presence. My second power. Hurry up and descend so that we can fuse together. The evil spirit's panicked and urgent voice rang out from the core. Although it was an undying existence in its core state, it was also in its weakest state. It could ignore everything Jianqin and the others could do, but it could not ignore the power of the primordial god silk. The power just happened to be able to harm its core that was known to be undying. The evil spirit's core trembled violently. It was finally heavily injured from the power of the primordial god silk. It began to disperse at a visible rate. However, the rate at which it was dispersing was rather insignificant compared to its tremendous core. It would probably take half a month to completely destroy its core. However, the evil spirit's second power had already descended from outer space. It enveloped the Tianyuan continent as a huge, blood-red cloud, dyeing the sky red. The entire world seemed to have been dyed red. At this rate, the second power would fuse with the evil spirit in just a few seconds. Jianqin, the Spirit King, and all the Origin Realm experts and sainthood experts raised their heads at that moment. They stared at the huge, blood-red cloud that was rapidly descending from outer space. All of their eyes were filled with reluctance, and most of them were filled with despair. All of them knew that once the evil spirit fused with the second power, they would no longer be able to turn the situation around. Jianqin smiled miserably. He had never thought that his life would end under the calamity of the world. He was filled with reluctance as well. The receival protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints had also thought about escaping to the Saints' world. But opening the tunnel to the Saints' world was not something that could be completed in a short amount of time. The evil spirit would never let them leave. Fairy Haoyue had already stood up in the bright moon divine hall. Her eyes shone brightly as she sternly communicated with Jianqin. Jianqin, give up on this world. I'll burn my soul to open the gateway to the Saints' world. You can leave with your loved ones. If you don't leave now, it'll be too late. Fairy Haoyue was already prepared to leave by herself at any time. However, she would need to use a secret technique to do so. The price was so great that she was unwilling to accept it so easily. At the same time, she would have to bear the risk of her soul being destroyed. After all, she no longer possessed the strength she had when she was at her peak. She was only a weak soul. If she could convince Jianqin, the price she had to pay would be much lower, even if she had to burn her soul to open the tunnel, so that Jianqin could leave with the bright moon divine hall. If Jianqin remains stubborn, I'll leave by myself, even if I have to bear the great risk of my soul being destroyed, Fairy Haoyue thought. The Tianyuan continent revered me as the sovereign of the humans. I, Jianqin, bear such a great reputation, so how can I abandon them and leave by myself? Moreover, I'm not someone who's afraid of death, Jianqin firmly declined. At the same time, a blurry figure appeared at the top of the elven god tree. She was the greatest divine king of the god clan, Audiobook. There's no hope for this world anymore. Looks like I can only abandon my clansmen here and leave with the war god, Audiobook murmured to herself. High in the sky, the strands of blood rapidly pressed down, radiating with an extremely tremendous pressure that permeated the surroundings. All the Origin Realm experts and Sainthood experts clenched the primordial god silk tightly. Many of them were filled with great reluctance to accept this. At this moment, a saint ruler from the world of Forsaken Saint's hand had been cut by the primordial god silk because he had used too much strength. Blood immediately flowed out, staining the primordial god silk. It was silently absorbed by the primordial god silk. The moment the blood was absorbed, the primordial god silk in the saint ruler's hand began to shine with a golden light that was even more dazzling than the other parts of the silk. However, it was not very obvious, so it was difficult to tell with the naked eye. However, Jianqin had already refined the primordial god silk and established a connection with it long ago. Any changes to the primordial god silk were unable to escape his senses. Jianqin was stunned and immediately looked at the saint ruler. His eyes immediately lit up when he saw the saint ruler's cut hand. Blood can actually strengthen the primordial god silk? No, I've clearly tried it before. Even my chaotic blood can't make the primordial god silk change like this, Jianqin thought. He was rather confused, but he immediately ordered, "Quick, everyone cut your hand and drip your blood onto the primordial god silk." Immediately, quite a few people obeyed Jianqin's orders and cut their hands, allowing their blood to stain the primordial god silk. A portion of their blood was unable to fuse with the primordial god silk at all, but the primordial god silk absorbed the blood of others. The primordial god silk immediately began to shine brightly after absorbing the blood. It shone with an even brighter golden light, allowing people to tell with a single glance that it was much more powerful than before. The damage it dealt to the evil spirit's core had increased as well. It's the world of forsaken saints. The blood of cultivators from the world of forsaken saints actually has such a wondrous effect on the primordial god silk. Not only can the primordial god silk absorb their blood, but their blood is like a great tonic to the primordial god silk as well. The blood of the people of our world is useless to the primordial god silk. Jianqin immediately became overjoyed with this discovery. He could not help but cry out, "The bloodlines of the people from the world of forsaken saints are extraordinary." The sword spirits murmured. The Spirit King's eyes narrowed, and he immediately called out, "Quick, all forsaken saints, immediately release your blood so that the primordial god silk can absorb it. This might be our only hope of fending off the crisis." With that, the Spirit King cut his hand first and allowed his blood to fuse with the primordial god silk. The other people from the world of forsaken saints did not hesitate at all. They all cut their hands with their final hopes and offered up their blood. Sure enough, all the blood from the forsaken saints was absorbed by the primordial god silk. Immediately, the primordial god silk shone brightly as the power within rapidly recovered. The strengthening of the primordial god silk caused the evil spirit to shriek out miserably. Its core rapidly dispersed. Clearly, it had suffered great damage. Jianqin raised his head to look at the sky. The blood-red cloud had already loomed over his head. In just a few seconds, it would fuse with the evil spirit's core. During that time, even if the primordial god silk became even more powerful, it would not be able to destroy the evil spirit's core. Chapter 1631. At this moment, a green light shot over from the distance at an unbelievable speed. An illusory ancient tree appeared in the blink of an eye. A surging aura of life permeated the air, blocking the blood cloud from below. When the blood cloud collided with the illusory ancient tree, the speed of the blood cloud's descent came to an abrupt halt. "I've sacrificed 30% of my vitality to stop the evil spirit's power and buy some time for you. However, in my current condition, the remaining 30% of my vitality is nowhere close to what it was when I was at my peak condition, so I can't last for much longer. You only have a day at most. If you can't destroy the evil spirit's core in a day, I can only leave with the war god." Aladona's voice rang out in Jianqin and the Spirit King's ears. The origin realm experts of the two worlds only saw the illusionary tree hover in the air, stopping the evil spirit's power. They did not receive Aladona's message. Jianqin was immediately overjoyed when he heard that. Aladona's strength had far exceeded his expectations. He originally believed that Aladona would not be able to interfere with this matter as she was only a soul. After all, no matter how powerful she had been when she was alive, she would be extremely weak with just a soul. Moreover, Aladona was the divine king of a higher world. She was supreme and viewed everyone as ants. Why would such a supreme existence care about the weaker creatures of the Tianyuan continent? He had seen this from Protector Shui. Protector Shui had destroyed an entire era back then. However, he had never thought that Aladona would not leave with Taita even though she clearly had the ability to do so. Instead, she sacrificed 30% of her vitality to buy them a day of time. Jianqin was rather surprised by the fact that a mighty divine king would be willing to pay such a price to help a group of creatures that were as weak as ants in her eyes. However, no matter what, Aladona's actions were a great kindness to the 4 races of the Tianyuan continent and countless people in the world of Forsaken Saints. A gleam of light flashed through the Spirit King's eyes when he heard the message. He deeply glanced in the direction of the elves on the wasteland continent before looking at the illusory tree that had stopped the evil spirit's power from descending. The light in his eyes flickered a few times before he forced his blood into the primordial god silk as hard as he could. At the same time, he circulated his cultivation method, rapidly replenishing his blood even as it was drained away. What is this? It can actually resist such a tremendous and terrifying power like the great tribulation of heaven and earth? All the Origin Realm experts of the 2 worlds raised their heads and stared at the single, resplendent pillar of light in the sky. Their faces were filled with shock. They were not the only ones. All the sainthood experts in the 2 worlds raised their heads to look at the sky. Countless gazes gathered on the illusionary tree that stood between the heavens and the earth at the same time. Shock and excitement filled their faces. That seems to be the elven god tree of the elves. Impossible. That tree is extraordinary and shone brilliantly in ancient times, but it's only at the level of the Holy Emperor. How can it stop such a terrifying, evil power? The Origin Realm experts on the side of the Tianyuan continent recognized the origins of the tree. Disbelief filled their faces. That's the elven god tree. When did the elven god tree become so powerful? It can actually stop such a terrifying, evil power. Probably even Sovereign Genshin and the Spirit King of the world of Forsaken Saints can't do something like that. On the wasteland continent, the sainthood experts of the 100 races all stared at the divine tree in the sky in surprise. All of them were in disbelief, and many of them even rubbed their eyes in disbelief. They wondered if they were seeing things. The elven god tree had existed for a very long time. It was no stranger to the 100 races. But when had it become so powerful? In particular, the unimaginably dense and terrifying life force that blossomed at this moment shocked all of them. This was because the life force was just too great, so great that it exceeded the scope of many of their understanding. It could even faintly stand up to the terrifying evil force. Quick, make time. We only have a day. If we can't destroy the origin energy of the crisis of the world in a day, we'll all die, the Spirit King growled. The Spirit King growled. It was all up to the world of Forsaken Saints to destroy the evil spirits because of their special bloodline. Only the blood of the Forsaken Saints would be beneficial to the primordial god Silk. At this moment, none of the cultivators from the world of Forsaken Saints who had come to the Tianyuan continent remained uninvolved. All the sainthood experts, protectors, elders, and even the Spirit King offered their blood to the primordial god Silk. As for the cultivators of the 4 races on the Tianyuan continent, they had nothing to do with it because they were unable to help now that the situation had developed to such a state. The primordial god Silk shone with more and more dazzling light. In the end, it turned into a golden sun, illuminating the entire world. It blotted out the blood-red sky and dyed the entire world golden. The evil spirit source that was trapped inside could no longer maintain its calm. It crazily charged left and right, letting out waves of miserable shrieks that were filled with pain. Its source that was known as undying and indestructible was currently shrinking bit by bit. Once its source completely disappeared, it would no longer be able to maintain its composure. Once it was completely gone, it would cease to exist. This lasted for half a day. After half a day, the evil spirit's core had shrunk by a third. All the Forsaken Saints from the world of Forsaken Saints had become pale and haggard. There were even many saint rulers and saint kings who were on the verge of collapsing. They had all become extremely weak from the tremendous loss of blood. Although they constantly produced new blood, the regeneration rate was nowhere near as fast as the loss of blood. At the same time, the endless regeneration of blood placed a very heavy burden on their bodies. It severely depleted their vital energies. People from the world of Forsaken Saints constantly poured out of the tunnel that connected the Tianyuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints. They had all hurried over under the Spirit King's orders so that they could contribute to avert the crisis of the world. Chapter 1632. Jianqin was not the only one who had noticed this. All the Origin Realm experts and Sainthood experts present could tell the same. They were unable to destroy the evil spirit's core in a single day. The world of Forsaken Saints continued to provide blood, but everyone no longer felt as excited and hopeful as they had half a day ago. They had returned to a gloomy and oppressive mood, as if they were facing the end of the world. The atmosphere became extremely heavy. I'm not alone in the world of Forsaken Saints. I have tens of thousands of clansmen behind me. As the patriarch, if I can't even protect my own clansmen, how can I live up to my status as the patriarch? If my clansmen and I cannot avoid death, then I have to die on the front lines as the patriarch. I have to use my life to protect my clansmen. Suddenly, a holy emperor from the world of Forsaken Saints laughed aloud. With that, white flames suddenly appeared on his body. His body rapidly melted within the flames, allowing an even more powerful bloodline power to enter the primordial god Silk. Mandalf! Someone cried out in grief. Mandalf was burning his vital energies and body to destroy the evil spirit's core. At that moment, everyone's gazes gathered on Mandalf. Whether it was the cultivators from the Four Races or the world of Forsaken Saints, their gazes toward Mandalf were filled with admiration and respect. Even if I die, I want to die before my clansmen. My clansmen, I won't be able to protect you in the future. I'll be taking my leave first, Mandalf smiled. His body had been reduced to ashes by the white flames. Mandalf, you've done well. We have no other choice. If we don't destroy this damn thing here, all the hundreds of billions of people from our world will be doomed once it recovers. Since we're going to die either way, we might as well die with some value, said Mandalf. Another holy emperor from the world of Forsaken Saints stepped forward and spoke boldly. Just like Mandalf, he burned his vital energies until he died. In the end, even his body was reduced to ashes. Their vital energies had already been severely depleted to the point where it was difficult for them to regenerate blood. Now that they were burning their vital energies together with their bodies, it was equivalent to activating the last bit of their bloodline power. Even their lives had become a part of their bloodline power. At this moment, a holy emperor from the world of Forsaken Saints looked at Jianqin and clasped his hands. Sovereign Jianqin, may I ask if burning their vital energies will be helpful in destroying this damn thing? Jianqin looked at the holy emperor who had just spoken. From the holy emperor's eyes, he could see magnanimity, bravery, and determination. Jianqin nodded with a heavy heart. He already knew what the holy emperor was thinking. If that's the case, I don't have to worry, said the holy emperor. With that, a similar white flame appeared on his body. In the end, the holy emperor was reduced to ashes. Ha ha ha, it's already too late. Don't be afraid of death. Don't be afraid of death. Ha ha ha, it's already like this. Don't be afraid of death. We've chosen to die. This is a courageous way to die. If our sacrifice can save the lives of the people of the world of Forsaken Saints, the people of the world of Forsaken Saints will be grateful to us for generations to come. However, if we continue to be afraid of death, we'll only be able to live for a few more hours. What's the point of that? An old man called out sternly. He was also a saint emperor. Afterwards, the old man also burned his vital energies. He was reduced to ashes along with his body. Perhaps because they had been influenced by them, more and more people from the world of Forsaken Saints began to speak boldly. They all offered up their lives. Not only were there holy emperors, but there were also holy emperors, saint rulers, and so on. Their sacrifice allowed the primordial god Silk to become even more powerful. It shone with a dazzling light. Jianqin, the environment of our world of Forsaken Saints, is horrible. It's not suitable for people below sainthood to live. Many children and weak Forsaken Saints basically die to the horrible environment every day. We've come to your world to travel to the Saints' world, as well as to find a better place for our clansmen to live. Although we've invaded your world in the past and caused you heavy losses, we will use this opportunity to make up for those losses. I, Gong Shiming, am willing to sacrifice my life to stop the crisis. I only hope that once the crisis of the world is averted, you can give our weak clansmen a place to live. I will be eternally grateful even in the underworld. Gong Shiming bowed deeply to Jianchen before a layer of white flames appeared on him. He began to burn his vital energies. Gong Shiming. Chan Jingyun stared at Gong Shiming with mixed feelings. Her heart was filled with an indescribable bitterness as she watched her old friend, whom she had known for over 10,000 years, gradually approach death. Xiongzhong and the other elders from the world of Forsaken Saints, as well as all the Origin Realm experts from the Tianyuan continent, stared at Gong Shiming as well. Their gazes underwent a drastic change, becoming filled with respect and admiration. A deathly silence descended. Everyone was stern as they stared at Gong Shiming. Their hearts were in turmoil. Gong Shiming was an elder of the Returnant's realm. His status was incomparable to the Holy Emperor, yet he had actually chosen this path of no return. His courage and boldness had deeply shaken everyone present. Jianchen was filled with joy. He bowed deeply to Gong Shiming and said with a heavy voice, I promise you that if we successfully survive this crisis, I, Jianchen, will definitely fulfill your final wish. Gong Shiming seemed to have been relieved of a great burden. He smiled faintly as his body turned to dust. The sacrifice of a Returnant's expert immediately made the primordial god silk shine even more dazzlingly. Vaguely, it seemed like a layer of golden flames was blazing and pulsing. Afterward, the people from the world of Forsaken Saints burned their vital essences one after another. After Gong Shiming, another elder from Ouyang-Yangwen's side chose to sacrifice himself. 7 other Receival Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints also sacrificed their precious lives, turning them into the power of the primordial god Silk to deal with the evil spirit's origin energy. Aside from the 9 Origin Realm experts, there were also many Saint Realm experts. There were countless other sainthood experts from the world of Forsaken Saints who were also burning their vital energies. They were surrounded by a layer of white flames as they shone with the most resplendent light. Under the gazes of all the experts and Origin Realm experts, they completed the final journey of their lives. This scene was both heroic and pessimistic. Countless people were affected by it. All the sainthood experts, and even the Origin Realm experts on the Tianyuan continent were deeply shaken. Many of them even began to tear up. Jianchen hovered in the air as he stared at the cultivators from the world of Forsaken Saints who had basically sacrificed their lives. He bowed deeply at them all. He was so shaken that he was speechless. Chapter 1633. Whether it was the humans, the sea race, the magical beasts, or the 100 races, all the cultivators from the Tianyuan continent felt their hearts tremble. They stared at the people from the world of Forsaken Saints who were willing to sacrifice their lives for the sake of averting the crisis of the world with mixed feelings. Many people showed admiration in their eyes. They had been enemies with the world of Forsaken Saints before and had fought several times, resulting in heavy casualties. The Tianyuan continent had even been split into 4 continents as a result, resulting in unimaginable losses. Many people on the Tianyuan continent felt deep hatred for the foreign cultivators because the world of Forsaken Saints was the invader. If they had not invaded the world, all these losses could have been avoided. However, at that moment, the cultivators from the world of Forsaken Saints had actually offered up their lives in order to stop the crisis of the world. They had burned away all their vital energies and bodies, using their deaths to force out the last sliver of their bloodline power. Their actions deeply touched the hearts of all the cultivators present. It also caused the hatred the experts from the 4 races from the Tianyuan continent felt towards the world of forsaken saints decrease by quite a bit. Unfortunately, only the power of the bloodline of the forsaken saints from the world of forsaken saints was effective against the primordial god Silk. Otherwise, it would not be just the cultivators from the world of forsaken saints who were willing to sacrifice themselves. The primordial god Silk shone with an unprecedented golden light after absorbing the power of the bloodlines of the cultivators and the elders who had reached the origin realm. In the end, the golden light directly turned into a roaring, golden flame. It spat out tongues of flame as it incinerated the evil spirit's core. The evil spirit's core, which was known to be indestructible, dissipated at an exponential rate under the burning of the golden flames. In the end, the evil spirit's core became smaller and smaller, weaker and weaker. The painful cries of the evil spirit rang out from the core. Its second power had been blocked by Alladona's 30% life force, preventing it from fusing with the evil spirit and allowing it to recover to its peak strength. Its core was trapped by the primordial god Silk, so it was unable to break free. The evil spirit seemed to know that it would not be able to escape today, and it roared furiously and unwillingly. However, its voice grew smaller and smaller as it was burned by the golden flames formed from the primordial god Silk, and it grew weaker and weaker. In the end, it vanished. Its core that was known to be indestructible, something that even Genshin and the Spirit King could do nothing about, finally dispersed under the golden flames of the primordial god Silk. Genshin, the Spirit King, and the Origin Realm experts in the surroundings all let out a sigh of relief when they sensed the evil presence vanish. Many of them smiled from having survived a disaster, and over 80% of the cultivators on the Tianyuan continents side-bowed deeply in the direction of the world of forsaken saints. They did not bow to the living cultivators from the world of forsaken saints. Instead, they bowed to the people who had sacrificed their lives to stop the crisis of the world. The crisis of the world hasn't been completely destroyed. There's still a sliver of its soul left, Genshin said in a deep voice. He looked at the sky. The blood-red cloud that had basically filled the entire sky still existed. It shone with a demonic red light as it resisted the tree of life condensed from 30% of Alladona's life force. However, the resistance had been greatly weakened by the disappearance of the evil spirit's core. After all, there was only a sliver of the evil spirit's soul in the blood-red cloud. It was just far too weak, so it was unable to use the tremendous energy. As a result, the sliver of soul was unable to unleash any of its power, even though it was powerful enough to overturn the universe. With a thought from Genshin, the two pieces of the primordial god Silk shone with dazzling light. Under a layer of golden flames, they soared into the sky like two huge dragons. They directly entered the blood-red cloud with an unstoppable force. They planned on wiping out the evil spirits, soul hidden in the cloud. Genshin stood below and slowly closed his eyes. The senses of his soul seemed to have fused with the primordial god Silk. He controlled the primordial god Silk to move through the blood-red cloud. Wherever the primordial god Silk passed by, the clouds in the surroundings would begin to disperse. Every single cloud, there was an evil energy that belonged to the evil spirit. It was extremely powerful, enough to pose a fatal threat to Genshin and the Spirit King. However, the primordial god Silk just happened to counter the energy. Coupled with the fact that the evil spirit's soul could not control the energy, the primordial god Silk was unstoppable in the blood-red cloud. Although the sliver of the evil spirit's soul had carefully hidden itself in the blood-red cloud, Genshin still found it very soon. He immediately controlled the two strands of primordial god Silk to surround it, forming a huge net that enveloped the region. It trapped the sliver of the evil spirit's soul in the blood-red cloud. Afterwards, the golden net rapidly shrank, forcing the sliver of the evil spirit's soul to be unable to escape. Under the attacks of the primordial god Silk, it could only produce a chilling cry before dispersing. However, Genshin did not let his guard down. He continued to control the primordial god Silk to move through the blood-red cloud. He carefully sensed for any remaining fragments of the evil spirit's soul fragment. This was because he could not guarantee that the fragment he had just destroyed was all that the evil spirit had left behind. If a fragment of its soul remained, it would cause endless trouble once it matured. The golden flames on the primordial god's silk had already vanished, and its golden light became dimmer and dimmer. As it purified the blood-red cloud, the power within it rapidly dispersed as well. Jianqin controlled the primordial god's silk to search through the blood-red cloud several times. Only when the primordial god's silk had dimmed and the power within it had been depleted did he stop searching. He believed that it was impossible for the evil spirit's soul fragment to remain after searching so carefully. After all, a third of the blood-red cloud had already been purified by the primordial god's silk. With how weak the fragment was, it was impossible for it to hide from his careful search. Below, all the cultivators from the two worlds raised their heads and stared at the blood-red cloud in the sky. Some of them would look at Jianqin from time to time. Their gazes were filled with admiration and fear, as well as some anticipation. They all knew that there was still a fragment of the evil spirit's soul hidden in the blood-red cloud. Whether they could destroy the fragment or not all depended on Jianqin. If the soul fragment could not be destroyed, although they could temporarily avoid the calamity of this world, when the soul fragment grew up again in the future, the calamity of the world would occur again. At that time, no one knew if they would have enough power to resist the second calamity of the world. The Spirit King sternly stared at the blood-red cloud in the sky as well. He knew that they had not completely won the battle, even though they had destroyed the evil spirit's core. At this moment, 2 strands of primordial god silk flickered with a dim golden light as they appeared from the blood-red cloud. They wrapped around Jianqin's wrist as 2 golden threads. At the same time, Jianqin slowly opened his eyes. Some exhaustion appeared on his face. Did you destroy the remaining fragment of the soul from the crisis of the world? The Spirit King arrived before Jianqin and asked eagerly. Jianqin exhaled deeply. He smiled victoriously and said, "Fortunately, I did not fail. I've destroyed the last fragment of the soul from the crisis of the world." That's good, that's good. The sacrifices of so many people from our world of forsaken saints have not been in vain, including a few Origin realm elders and protectors. The Spirit King smiled happily as well. Jianqin did not speak loudly, but he did not try to hide it. Even the weakest person present was a saint ruler, so they could clearly hear what Jianqin had said even from some distance away. Immediately, cheers rang out. Many people were excited, while a small number of people began to sob. Their faces were filled with sorrow. Although they had persevered until the end and survived, many of their loved ones had died in this battle. One could very well imagine the pain in their hearts. Chapter 1634. We finally won. I never thought that the crisis of the world would be so terrifying. We've sacrificed so many experts to destroy it, including a few Origin realm experts. Many people from the 4 races of the Tianyuan continent and the world of forsaken saints gently sighed. Many of them became dazed. Everything that had happened before was like a dream to them. They had lived for thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years. They could even occasionally learn about things that happened millions of years ago through some ancient books. Whether it was qualifications or experience, they were incomparably rich. Not to say that they knew the beginning and end of the world, but almost all the sensational events that happened in the past million years were clear to many of them. However, what happened today completely subverted their understanding. A single crisis of the world had caused such heavy damage to the Tianyuan continent and the world of forsaken saints, where they had almost been destroyed. This shocked everyone present, even though they had successfully survived the crisis. Every single one of them knew extremely well just how dangerous it had been for them to survive the crisis. This battle was destined to be passed down through the ages. It would be recorded in the ancient records of various organizations and passed down for all eternity. The world of forsaken saints had paid a price far greater than the Tianyuan continent in the battle against the evil spirit. Tens of thousands of sainthood experts had died. They had all sacrificed their lives willingly, burning their vital energies and forcing all the power of their bloodline into the primordial god silk. Even their corpses had been reduced to ashes. Even a few protectors and elders who had reached the origin realm had suffered the same fate. The surviving cultivators from the world of forsaken saints were all pale and haggard because they had lost a large amount of essence blood. Many of them had already collapsed on the ground. The same was true for the Spirit King. He was even weaker than the experts from the world of forsaken saints. Not only was he the one who had lost the most essence blood, but he had also suffered an intense backlash from forcefully using the second move of a will to split the heavens in the battle against the evil spirit. Not only had his vitality weakened, but his wounds were so severe that he was even more injured than anyone else present. Jianqin was also heavily injured, even more so than the Spirit King at times. However, he possessed the chaotic body and the origin energy of radiant saint force. The two powers basically healed him at all times, so his wounds did not worsen at all. Instead, most of them had recovered. The crisis of the world has been destroyed now, but the evil power from the crisis still hasn't completely dispersed. How do we deal with this power? If we let this power remain in the sky, it'll probably cause some people to feel uneasy. The Spirit King looked at the sky. The Spirit King stared at the sky and growled. However, his voice was filled with an unconcealable sense of weakness. Jianqin looked over. The blood-red clouds in the sky were still as dense as ever. From afar, it seemed like a huge red carpet had spread across the sky, dyeing the entire region blood-red. The scorching sun was unable to penetrate it at all. Jianqin frowned when he saw this. Even though the power of the primordial god silk had wiped out a third of the evil spirit's power, the remaining two-thirds was still extremely vast to Jianqin and the Spirit King. It had completely exceeded their strength. However, the evil spirit no longer controlled the power, so the threat it posed was reduced to a minimum. It could even be said that it was no longer a threat. However, completely wiping out the evil spirit's power was not something that Jianqin and the Spirit King could do. It was still not an easy task. Senior Aladona, can you lend us a hand and completely wipe out the evil power left behind by the crisis of the world? Jianqin asked the elven god tree in the territory of the elves on the wasteland continent for help. His primordial god silk was almost completely depleted, so using the power of the primordial god silk to purify the evil power was clearly unrealistic. At the same time, many of the cultivators from the world of forsaken saints had lost a large amount of essence blood earlier. Their blood had been regenerated time and time again, so they were all extremely weak. They were obviously unable to use the same method as before. After all, the evil spirit had been wiped out, so the remaining evil power did not pose much of a threat anymore. I can only use 30% of my life force to help you at most. There's only 1.5 left, so it's not enough to wipe out the evil power. However, I can use it to push the evil power into outer space, but I'll need the two of you to work together. Aladona's voice rang out in Jianqin's head. Her voice was rather weak as well. Clearly, losing 30% of her life force was a great loss to her. Then I'll have to trouble you, Senior, Jianqin said gratefully. As long as the evil power was pushed into outer space, he would have time to slowly deal with it. I wonder if my chaotic body can absorb this evil power. If it can, then my chaotic body... A gleam of light flashed through Jianqin's eyes. He immediately became rather tempted. Afterward, Jianqin, the Spirit King, and Aladona worked together. They used their supreme strength to seal up the evil power and slowly pushed it into outer space. At this moment, Aladona only had around 1/10 of her life force remaining. The injuries on your body are not light. If you don't treat them well, It may even leave behind irreversible sequelae that will affect your cultivation in the future. I'll give you this last bit of vitality to help you heal your injuries. It can also be considered as a good karma. However, I can't do anything about the injuries on your soul. Aladona's voice rang out in the Spirit King's head. Afterward, her last bit of life force immediately turned into a tremendous amount of life force and was channeled into the Spirit King's body. At that moment, the Spirit King became enveloped by a layer of dense green light. His wounds healed at an unbelievable rate under the green light. Even the weakness on his face rapidly receded. In just a few seconds, the Spirit King had completely recovered from his heavy wounds. He healed so quickly that it had completely surpassed the fusion of Jianshin's chaotic body and radiant Saint Force origin energy. After all, this was the life force of a divine king. Even though it was not a lot, it was still extremely terrifying. It was not something Class 9, radiant Saint Force origin energy, could compare to. Thank you, Senior. Xin Jian will remember your kindness today. If I have the chance in the future, I will definitely repay you. The Spirit King clasped his hands in Aladona's direction. Not only had the strand of life force from Aladona healed his wounds, but the remaining life force had also fused with his cultivation, turning into his own energy. His strength had increased by quite a lot once again. If it were not for the restrictions of this world, he could have reached godhood at any time. The blood-red cloud that enveloped the Tianyuan continent had vanished. When the scorching sun illuminated the land once again, Jianshin had already entered the evil power all by himself. He wanted to try and see if he could absorb the power and refine it into his own chaotic force. Chapter 1635. As soon as Jianshin entered the blood-red cloud, he felt an extremely tremendous pressure radiate from all directions. It weighed down on him like mountains, causing him to suddenly sink. His speed was greatly affected, making him much slower. At the same time, an evil presence entered Jianshin's head, affecting Jianshin's soul. Vaguely, he seemed to hallucinate. Jianshin's eyes narrowed as a gleam of light flickered through them. He calmed himself down and suppressed the thoughts of hallucinating from the evil power. Afterward, the azulite swords hovered above his head, shining with an azure and violet light. They formed a barrier around him. Chaotic force filled his entire body at that moment as well, working with the azulite swords to block the pressure from the blood-red cloud. After all, the blood-red cloud was equivalent to the evil spirit's power at its peak. Even though a third of it had been purified by the primordial god Silk, the remaining two-thirds was still far more powerful than Jianshin. If the evil spirit still possessed its consciousness, even if it controlled the remaining two-thirds, the strength it could unleash would be far more than what Jianshin and the Spirit King could contend against. Even though the evil spirit had been destroyed, the power of the blood-red cloud still pressured Jianshin quite a bit. Jianshin did not approach the center of the blood-red cloud. Instead, he only traveled 100 meters before stopping at the edge of the cloud. He sat down sternly. Even though he knew that the evil spirit had been destroyed, Jianshin still did not dare to be careless as he stood in the blood-red cloud. This was because the cloud was just too powerful. It had completely surpassed the level of deities. He even suspected that even the power controlled by gods was not as great as the blood-red cloud. Jianshin sat in the blood-red cloud and sucked in a deep breath. He slowly closed his eyes and began to carefully absorb the power of the cloud. Since the cloud was just too powerful and contained an extremely evil presence, Jianshin did not know whether his chaotic body could absorb the power, nor did he know whether the power would harm him or not. As a result, he did not dare to act recklessly for the first time. He only absorbed a tiny sliver of the cloud's power. When Jianshin absorbed the tiny sliver of power, his body began to tremble violently before he could refine it. As soon as the sliver of power entered his body, it erupted with an extremely great power. It was like an exploding barrel of gunpowder, erupting with shocking pulses. It had almost shattered Jianshin's meridians. The sliver of power was just too great. Even with Jianshin's 8th-layer chaotic body, he found it rather difficult to endure, yet he had only absorbed a tiny sliver. If he absorbed too much of it all at once, he would probably become extremely heavily injured. Jianshin gritted his teeth and silently endured the intense pain. Every time his chaotic body broke through, he would have to undergo the pain of refining his body. Every time he underwent the process, it would be a torment of life and death. The pain from the sliver of power was nowhere near as great as the pain from refining his body. Enduring this kind of pain was nothing to Jianshin. The chaotic body within Jianshin's chaotic Naiden surged as strands of chaotic force surged. At the same time, he circulated his cultivation method to refine the sliver of power. Even though the power of the cloud was great, it was only a tiny sliver. There was not enough of it, so it was refined by Jianshin in just a short while. Jianshin did not rejoice at all after refining the sliver of power. Instead, he frowned and slowly opened his eyes. He murmured, "The sliver of power has actually been refined into nothingness. It hasn't brought me any benefits at all. Is it impossible to refine the power in the cloud?" Impossible. Chaotic force is the highest level of energy in the universe. Aside from Xianhuang Qi, there is no other energy that can compare to chaotic force. Even the yin and yang qi are formed from chaotic force. Although my current chaotic force is far from being true chaotic force, it still possesses a sliver of the characteristics of chaotic force. Although the power of the blood cloud is stronger than the 8th layer of chaotic force that I have grasped, it is still an ownerless energy that cannot be controlled by anyone. Logically speaking, if I want to refine and absorb the energy of the blood cloud, there is a 70 to 80% chance of success. Jianshin dismissed the idea that the chaotic body was unable to absorb the power of the cloud very soon. According to his understanding of chaotic force, it could absorb all kinds of energy in the world. There was no distinction between the 5 elements. Of course, that was under the premise that the absorbed energy was within the tolerance of his chaotic body. Jianshin did not give up. He continued to absorb and refine the power of the cloud. After a moment of thought, he became even more confident that the chaotic body could absorb the power of the cloud. If the cloud was under the evil spirit's control, he naturally would not have dared to think like that. However, the cloud of power was only a form of death energy that he could not resist. It did not even possess the ability to attack, which gave him a sliver of a chance to refine it for his own use. The amount of energy required to break through to the next layer of the chaotic body would multiply. It required an extremely large amount of energy. Now that he had reached the 8th layer, the amount of resources he needed to reach the 9th layer would exceed Jianshin's imagination. This amount of resources was not something that could be found on the Tianyuan continent. If he could use the power of the evil spirit's clone to advance his chaotic body, even if he could not reach the 9th layer, it would still be a great fortune for Jianshin. He could not afford to miss it. On his second attempt, Jianshin failed as well. The strand of energy he had absorbed was forcefully refined into nothingness, leaving nothing behind. His chaotic body did not grow at all either. Jianshin did not become dejected. He tried a 3rd time, but he failed as well. 4th time, failure. 5th time, failure. Finally, after 5 failures, Jianshin succeeded on his 6th try. The strand of energy that he had absorbed was finally refined into a strand of chaotic force, turning into his own power. I understand now. Due to the uniqueness of the blood cloud's energy, I can't refine every single strand into chaotic force. I need to extract its essence. But the difficulty lies in the fact that it's impossible to distinguish the essence. Jianshin's eyes shone brightly. As long as he could refine the energy into chaotic force, he would be happy even if he had to waste a lot of time. Chapter 1636. Afterwards, Jianshin seemed to have gone mad. He became completely submerged in cultivation. using this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to increase his strength as much as possible. He did not pay any attention to the various matters that had occurred after the battle on the Tianyuan continent. After telling everyone that he was going into seclusion through a simple message, he completely sealed himself off in the blood-red cloud. Only after Genshin had gone into seclusion did the experts of the two worlds begin to disperse. The first to leave were the people from the 4 races. Some of the more heavily injured people left as soon as possible, returning to their own clans to heal. There were also many cultivators who had lost their loved ones who remained. They stared at the battlefield in sorrow as they struggled to calm down. They refused to leave even after a very long time. In the blink of an eye, almost half of the people gathered on the battlefield had left. They all belonged to the 4 races of this world. The cultivators from the world of Forsaken Saints all remained where they were. None of them dared to leave without the Spirit King's orders. The Spirit King was the absolute ruler of the world of Forsaken Saints. If the world of Forsaken Saints was an empire, the Spirit King would be the emperor of the empire, unlike the 4 races of the Tianyuan continent. Although each race possessed origin realm experts, they did not place too many restrictions on their clansmen. They were relatively more free. I never thought that Genshin would choose to enter seclusion at a time like this. Are you really cultivating, or are you running away from something? The Spirit King stared at the blood-red cloud in outer space as he murmured emotionlessly, "Whatever. Since you want to enter seclusion, I'll wait until you're done. I just happen to need some time to heal the wounds of my soul," thought the Spirit King before looking away. He looked at the cultivators from the world of Forsaken Saints who had yet to leave and said, "All of you return. The protectors and elders remain on the Tianyuan continent to recover. Once you've recovered, cooperate with the Tianyuan continent to clean up the battlefield." The cultivators from the world of Forsaken Saints nodded in unison. Afterward, all the sainthood experts returned to the world of Forsaken Saints through space gates. All the protectors and elders remained behind. They all understood that the Spirit King wanted them to remain because he was preparing to set foot on the Tianyuan continent. Although the greatest contributor was Genshin, their world of Forsaken Saints had contributed greatly as well. It could even be said that if it were not for the cultivators from the world of Forsaken Saints who were willing to sacrifice their lives, they would still have been defeated in the end even with Genshin's help. Their world of Forsaken Saints had paid such a heavy price to deal with the crisis of the world. If the Tianyuan continent did not provide them with satisfactory compensation, they would never give up. Count up all the clansmen who have died after burning their vital energies. Place their memorial tablets in the sacred spirit hall. Their clans and relatives will be protected by the sacred spirit hall, ordered the Spirit King. Yes, Spirit King, the protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints replied. Our Tianyuan continent wants a list of their names as well. We admire their great contributions to stopping the crisis of the world. We want their names and heroic deeds to be passed down. They deserve all of our respect. Shengguanmu slowly flew over from afar and said sternly, with her strength at mid-reciprocity, she was the undisputed second sovereign of the human race. Her every word and action could obviously influence the humans of the Tianyuan continent. She could make some decisions for certain matters. The Spirit King looked at Shengguanmu, and an undetectable gleam of light flashed through his eyes. After a moment of thought, he said, "You're also a human of the Tianyuan continent, and you're a reciprocity expert who's only weaker than Genshin. You can represent the Tianyuan continent. Since Genshin isn't here right now, why don't you represent this world and come to an agreement with our world of Forsaken Saints?" Shengguanmu's heart skipped a beat. Although she had no idea what the agreement would entail, or even if it existed at all, she understood that the Spirit King wanted to use the fact that their world of Forsaken Saints had contributed greatly to stopping the crisis of the world to ask for a piece of land from the Tianyuan continent so that the world of Forsaken Saints could settle down. Due to the harsh environment of the world of Forsaken Saints, Countless people would die to natural disasters every year. It was not suitable for weak cultivators to live in, while the natural environment of the Tianyuan continent was like heaven to the weak cultivators of the world of forsaken saints. As a result, not only did the world of forsaken saints need to pass through the Tianyuan continent to reach the saints' world, it was also to find a place for the weak cultivators of the forsaken saints to settle down. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint the Spirit King. I may be a human of the Tianyuan continent, but I don't live on the Tianyuan continent. I've always stayed on 3 Saint Island. This is related to the agreement between the Tianyuan continent and your world of forsaken saints. So how can I make the decision as a foreigner? Let's wait for the human sovereign, Genshin, to make the decision, said Shangguan-mu. The Spirit King frowned slightly. He glanced at the huge, blood-red cloud in outer space deeply and said emotionlessly, "If that's the case, I'll wait for Genshin to emerge." Xiongzhong, present. Xiongzhong immediately bowed to the Spirit King from nearby. He was extremely polite. "Once you've recovered, discuss with the representatives of the Tianyuan continent about the matter of territory. Draw up a map first, and Genshin and I will make the final decision," the Spirit King said emotionlessly. His voice was filled with an unquestionable dominance. "Yes, Spirit King," Xiongzhong replied politely. With that, the Spirit King no longer remained. With a flash, he turned into a streak of light and left. However, he did not return to the world of forsaken saints immediately. Instead, he paid a visit to the territory of the elves on the wasteland continent to personally thank Aladona, who had transformed into the elven god tree. Only then did he return to the world of forsaken saints through a spatial tunnel to heal his soul. He had no idea whether he and Genshin would engage in a battle over territory once Genshin emerged. If they really did fight, it would be very difficult for him to be Genshin's opponent with his injured soul. As a result, he needed to return to his peak condition before Genshin emerged. This was because he would not back down when it came to territory, even if he and Genshin had once come from the same world. The expressions of Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, Guihai Dao, and the other human sovereigns became rather ugly when they saw the Spirit King leave all the Origin Realm elders and protectors on the Tianyuan continent. They all arrived beside Shangguan-mu, hoping that she would remain on the Tianyuan continent. After all, Genshin was not present right now. They felt extremely pressured when facing so many Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. On the other side, the expressions of the Origin Realm elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints changed slightly when they saw how Yang Lai and the others wished for Shangguan-mu, to remain on the Tianyuan continent. All of their gazes toward Shangguan-mu were filled with deep fear. "Don't worry. I will pay attention to the Tianyuan continent at all times from 3 Saint Island. If there's a need, I will hurry over immediately." Shangguan-mu tactfully declined their requests before looking at the crowd. Her gaze landed on Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, and Shangguan Aojian. When she saw Shangguan Aojian, a sliver of gentleness finally appeared in her cold eyes. She said, "Xiao Bao, Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, let's return to the island." Xiao Bao, Xiao Qian, and Xiao Yu had all taken part in the battle. They were currently filled with weakness and exhaustion. The 3 of them immediately flew out of the crowd when they heard Shangguan-mu's words. Under the envious gazes of many people, they returned to 3 Saint Island with Shangguan-mu. At the same time, a cold gaze landed on Shangguan Aojian's back from the crowd. There was some disdain in that gaze. It was a young man with an extraordinary bearing. His face was filled with undisguised pride. Even though he also seemed rather weak, he was unable to hide the noble bearing of someone from a large clan. The young man was the young master of Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Su. Over 20 years had passed, but Changyang Su had not changed at all compared to 20 years ago. Both his appearance and bearing were the same as before. The only thing that had changed was his strength. He was no longer a great saint master from 20 years ago. He was a saint ruler who had reached sainthood. Of course, he had only become a saint ruler after consuming countless precious heavenly resources and various resources from Changyang Prefecture. As the young master of Changyang Prefecture, coupled with the fact that he was loved by Changyang Ba, who held the greatest authority in Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Su was able to use all the resources in Changyang Prefecture fearlessly. He also received personal guidance from more than one holy emperor, which was why he was able to become a saint ruler at such a young age. He was different from Shangguan Aojian. Shangguan Aojian kept a low profile and never acted ostentatiously. Although there had been rumors about the young master of Three Saint Island on the Tianyuan continent in recent years, the rumors gradually vanished as Shangguan Aojian kept a low profile. On the other hand, Changyang Su's status immediately skyrocketed after he became the young master of Changyang Prefecture due to his glorious clan and terrifying background. He received the attention of countless people on the continent. Coupled with his rapid cultivation talent, rumors gradually spread that the young master of Changyang Prefecture would be able to catch up to Jianqin in the future. This was because Changyang Su had not used a violet cloud peach to become a saint ruler. Changyang Su stared at Shangguan Aojian's back as he clenched his fists. He thought, "Young master of Three Saint Island, I'll show you my power before long. Aren't you just a step ahead of me because you used the violet cloud peach you obtained from my uncle? Now that my uncle has returned, I'll have a violet cloud peach very soon as well, and it'll be of the best quality. Once I consume it, I'll personally go to Three Saint Island to challenge you and crush you beneath my feet. I'll make you understand that the reason why I lost to you several dozen times over the years was because I didn't have a violet cloud peach." Chapter 1637. After Shangguan Mu-Er's departure, the sainthood experts of the Sea Race and the 100 Races all left the Tianyuan continent with Poseidon and Taita. They returned to their own territories to recover. The battle earlier had been extremely difficult and dangerous. Although they had won in the end, the origin realm experts of the 4 races and the protectors and elders from the world of forsaken saints had all become extremely exhausted. In particular, the protectors and elders from the world of forsaken saints had exceeded their limits to regenerate blood, so they had exhausted far more energy than the origin realm experts from the Tianyuan continent. However, although Poseidon and Taita had left the Tianyuan continent and returned to their own clans, the two of them were the same as Shangguan Mu-Er. They paid close attention to the situation on the Tianyuan continent from very far away, guarding against the protectors and elders from the world of forsaken saints. The White Tiger did not return to the Beast God continent with the majority of the people from the Beast God continent. Instead, he remained on the Tianyuan continent, returning to Flame City with Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling. Although he was the beast god of the magical beasts, the sovereign of the magical beasts, the White Tiger did not feel any attachment to the beast god continent at all. He did not feel any sense of belonging at all. On the other hand, Flame City was Jianqin City, so the White Tiger felt a greater sense of belonging when he stayed there. Moreover, with so many origin realm experts from the world of forsaken saints remaining on the Tianyuan continent and Jianqin just happened to be away, the existence of the protectors and elders placed a great deal of pressure on the Tianyuan continent. At a time like this, the Tianyuan continent just happened to require even more origin realm experts. The White Tiger, Xiao Jin, and Xiao Ling personally stayed in Flame City, which unknowingly increased the city's status. Naturally, the holy emperor of the Peng clan, Sangqiong, would take care of the matters on the Beast God continent. With Sangqiong's experience, dealing with these matters was obviously a piece of cake for him. On the other hand, although the White Tiger was an origin realm expert, he did not have any experience in leadership. After all, his age and experience were all there was to it. Xiao Ling was the barrier spirit of Mercenary City, silently guarding the city for 1,000,000 years. However, Mercenary City had been destroyed long ago. Even the seal beneath Mercenary City had been destroyed. Her mission no longer existed. She would no longer be bound. In this world, Xiao Ling no longer had anyone close to her other than Jianqin. As a result, she had no home. so she naturally remained in Flame City. Perhaps even Xiao Ling herself did not realize it, but she had already begun to treat Flame City as her home. This was because the city had been founded by her brother, Jianqin. She felt a sense of closeness as she remained there. A Da, a Air, a San, and a Sea, the 4 new Origin Realm experts, currently supported each other as they stood on the shattered ground. They all looked at the blood-red cloud in outer space. During the battle against the evil spirit, the 4 of them had all broken through to the Origin Realm through the 4 strands of sword qi hidden in Jianqin's arm. Afterward, they used a formation and unleashed an earth-shaking strike to heavily injure the evil spirit. Due to the formation being far too powerful, they suffered a severe backlash after using it with their strength at the Origin Realm. As a result, the 4 of them did not even possess the ability to float. They stood on the shattered ground like ordinary people. Even though that was the case, no one dared to underestimate the 4 of them. Even though everyone could sense just how weak they were right now, the 4 of them had reached the Origin Realm after all. They had become the sovereigns of a world. Their status was completely different from before. Congratulations to the 4 of you for breaking through and reaching the Origin Realm. Although the battle has ended, the threat still remains. Please head to the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City to heal. We will provide you with the best medicine so that you can recover as soon as possible, said Jianqin. Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, and Gui Haidao arrived before the 4 brothers and invited them. The 4 of them could already tell that the 4 brothers were the most heavily injured among all the Origin Realm experts present. As a matter of fact, the 4 of them were unable to use the strength of the Origin Realm in their current condition. Probably even cultivators at the level of the Holy Emperor could pose a threat to them. Moreover, there were many Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints on the Tianyuan continent. Their existence was a great threat. So for safety's sake, Yang Lai, Gui Haidao, and Gui Haidao invited the 4 brothers to stay in the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City. This was because there was probably no other place on the Tianyuan continent that was safer than the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City aside from 3 Saint Island. Even Flame City was not safe. Although the powerful island master of 3 Saint Island was paying close attention to the Tianyuan continent, the 4 brothers were just too weak. If someone from the world of Forsaken Saints attacked the 4 of them at a time like this, probably even the island master would not be able to save them in time. Ada shook his head. Although we're heavily injured, we're not as weak as we seem. We still have some power to protect ourselves. Farewell. Ada's voice was still slightly weak, but it was filled with extremely great confidence. Ada and his brothers left this place. The 4 brothers supported each other as they wobbled into the air and flew into the distance. Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, and Gui Haidao remained where they were as they watched the 4 brothers leave. The 3 of them felt rather regretful that they were unable to keep the 4 brothers on the Tianyuan continent. They also felt slightly worried. They were worried that the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints would take advantage of the fact that the 4 brothers were weak to make trouble for them once they were far away. However, the 4 brothers insisted on leaving, so the 3 of them could not help them even if they wanted to. Jianqin was not present and Shangguanmu was on 3 Saint Island. The remaining Origin Realm experts on the Tianyuan continent were unable to put up any resistance against the protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints. They even felt extremely fortunate that the protectors and elders did not take the initiative to attack them. Brother, Jianqin's tower. Ayasi looked at Ada after leaving. He carefully communicated with him through a communication technique. A sliver of confusion appeared in his eyes. Chapter 1638. Let's do as you say. Let's find a place to cultivate first and recover our energy. At the same time, some unfamiliar information appeared in my head for some reason when I broke through. I need time to digest it all. All the Origin Realm elders and protectors gathered together in the world of Forsaken Saints. None of them left first. The origin realm experts of the Tianyuan continent were wary of them, but they were wary of the Tianyuan continent as well. They were wary of whether Shangguan Mu would secretly attack them at all times. The protectors and elders had experienced just how powerful Shangguan Mu was back in the world mountains of the world of Forsaken Saints. Even when they were at peak condition and had Ouyang Yangwen and Xiongzhong, two early reciprocity experts, they were only able to match Shangguan Mu when they worked together. Not to mention that Ouyang Yangwen was no longer present. Among the returnants elders, Gong Shiming and several other receival experts had died. Their strength had plummeted. If Shangguan Mu moved against them now, they had no doubt that she could easily heavily injure them all by herself. With the potential threat that was Shangguan Mu, all of them felt like they were standing on the edge of a pit of fire on the Tianyuan continent. If they were careless, they would be doomed. Let's go as well. We can't split up during this time, just in case. I'll keep the God-slaying formation safe. Once Shangguan Mu attacks us, we'll use the God-slaying formation to fend her off. Xiongzhong said to the protectors and elders behind him through a communication technique sternly. The protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints also nodded sternly. They all felt an intense sense of danger after the Spirit King's departure. Although they knew that neither Jianqin nor Shangguan Mu would attack them since they had contributed greatly to the crisis of the world, they still needed to be on guard. As for attacking the origin realm experts of the Tianyuan continent and making them lose a few more origin realm experts so that they could gain more benefits in the upcoming negotiations, they rejected the idea without any hesitation as soon as it appeared. If it were not for Shangguan Mu on Three Saint Island, the origin realm experts of the Tianyuan continent would not be a threat to them at all. Perhaps they really would have done something. As for Jianqin, the Spirit King would obviously deal with him. However, they did not dare to act recklessly due to Shangguan Mu's existence. At the same time, some of them even believed that they would be extremely lucky if Shangguan Mu did not attack them in the following days. The aftermath of the battle proceeded in an orderly manner. The devastated Tianyuan continent gradually recovered its peace. The various organizations and experts on the Tianyuan continent all went into hiding as the battle calmed down. They had first fought against the world of Forsaken Saints before taking part in the crisis of the world, so they had suffered heavy losses. Even the 10 protector clans that had stood for 1,000,000 years gradually declined. While the war brought heavy casualties, it also caused new changes to the situation on the Tianyuan continent. First, the 10 protector clans entered a period of unprecedented weakness. Aside from Changyang Prefecture, the Breeze Pavilion and the Tyrant's Blade School that were still as powerful as the midday sun, the other 7 protector clans basically only existed in name. The Holy Emperor and Holy Emperor of the protector clans had all died in battle. Without the Holy Emperor and Holy Emperor, the protector clans were not even as powerful as some ancient clans. In particular, a few powerful ancient clans seemed to be about to replace the protector clans. The peaceful Tianyuan continent had basically entered an era where saint rulers and holy emperors did not appear. The crisis of the world had been averted, and the problem with the Yinyang Saint Rock had been completely resolved. Without the rock's interference, the laws of the world gradually began to perfect. Cultivation became easier than before. Even the origin energy that had vanished for countless years had reappeared, allowing sainthood experts to break through with greater ease. Even the Holy Emperor had hopes of reaching the origin realm. As a result, many sainthood experts chose to remain in seclusion at this time. As they recovered, they also hoped that their strength would increase. The only thing that didn't change was the weak human realm warriors. These warriors were either fighting for their own livelihood or fighting for their own cultivation resources and cultivation methods. They were still fighting with magical beasts or their own kind. They were willing to sacrifice their lives and shed their blood just to fight for a better tomorrow for themselves. In the blink of an eye, 3 years passed peacefully. During those 3 years, A huge stone tablet stood in many cities on the Tianyuan continent. Every single stone tablet was protected by a mysterious power. They were so tough that even the Holy Emperor could not destroy them. The stone tablet was covered in unfamiliar names. On one side of the tablet was a description of how the owners of the names had once made great sacrifices for the sake of fending off the crisis of the world. Many people on the Tianyuan continent admired their heroic deeds. Other than that, rainbow clouds constantly appeared in the sky of the Tianyuan continent, the Beast God continent, and the Wasteland continent. Many people broke through during those 3 years. They either became kings, or emperors, but no one reached the origin realm. As for the sea, even though there were no auspicious clouds in the depths of the sea due to the sea god barrier, there were still many people who had made breakthroughs. The losses that the world had sustained in the previous battle were slowly recovering bit by bit. With the departure of the ice goddess Hall, the Arctic tundra's coldness rapidly plummeted, turning into a world of ice that posed no threat at all. At this moment, a golden divine hall stood silently in the depths of the tundra. The divine hall seemed to be forged from gold, shining with golden light. It was extremely eye-catching in the snow-white world of ice. Under Xiongzhong's lead, all the Origin Realm elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints had gathered in the divine hall. During the past year, they had only sent a single protector to help the Tianyuan continent deal with the aftermath of the battle. The rest of them had remained in the tundra to recover. They had not set foot on the Tianyuan continent at all. They had not even set foot in the divine hall. Shangguanmu, hung over their heads like a sharp sword. Chapter 1639. After a year of recuperation, we've all returned to our peak condition. It's time for us to complete the mission the Spirit King gave us before he left. As the only reciprocity expert among the protectors and elders, Xiongzhong boldly sat at the very front as he stared at the protectors and elders below, sternly. The Tianyuan continent has Shangguanmu. Enough to make us all fear her, and we don't know if she'll interfere with the negotiations with the Tianyuan continent this time. However, you must remember that the calamity of the world cannot be averted without the sacrifice of our people. At the same time, this is a mission the Spirit King personally gave us. As a result, even if Shangguanmu wants to interfere, we can't back down at all, nor can we harm the interests of our world. We've already sacrificed enough for this world, so it's time for us to take back some things. Let's set off now. Xiongzhong said with a heavy voice. With a wave of his hand, all the protectors and elders left the divine hall and headed for the Tianyuan continent. There was an extremely ordinary mountain village near the Cross Mountains on the Tianyuan continent. A few villagers lived there and they farmed for a living. Although there were a few young people who cultivated Saint Force, they were not particularly powerful. They could only be used to deal with a few low-level magical beasts. At that moment, in a farm in the small mountain village, an old man in sackcloth wielded a hoe. Using his muddy hands, he bent over and carefully planted vegetable sprouts into the ground. His aged eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life. Houston, the people from the world of Forsaken Saints have come. Please come to the Flame City of the Flame Mercenaries immediately. At this moment, a voice clearly rang out from afar, echoing in the old man's head. The old man's expression remained the same. After planting the vegetable sprout into the ground, he patted the soil off his hands. In the next moment, his entire body suddenly disappeared, leaving behind only a home made of ordinary iron. On an isolated island in the boundless sea, four old men were sitting cross-legged on a large rock and discussing with each other. Brother, my comprehension of the Nirvana sword formation has reached a new level. Aside from that, I've completely grasped 3 of the sword techniques that suddenly appeared in my head when we broke through. I'm still unable to use the remaining techniques due to my lack of strength. My cultivation hasn't increased at all, but my battle prowess is incomparable to a year ago. I even feel like no early receival expert will be my opponent once I use the sword techniques, Adda said excitedly. He was unable to contain his excitement. Ada nodded. In reality, Asi was not the only one who had improved by leaps and bounds in the past year. Even the other 3 of them had benefited greatly. It's a pity that Jianchen is still in seclusion. Who knows how long he'll be in seclusion? Looks like we'll have to delay this indefinitely if we want to find him and resolve some of our doubts. Ada looked at outer space and gently sighed. Ada, Asan, Asi, the people from the world of forsaken saints have arrived. Please come to Flame City as soon as possible. At this moment, a voice rang out in the 4 brothers' ears. Their eyes narrowed at the same time. After a moment of silence, Asi looked at Ada and said, "Brother, should we go?" "We were born in this world. This world is our home, so why shouldn't we go?" Ada said confidently before standing up from the rock. He left with the 3 brothers. At the same time, the war gods of the Sea Realm and the Wasteland continent received the message from the Tian Yuan continent. At that moment, all the Origin Realm experts in the world began to move at the same time, hurrying to the Tian Yuan continent. Tai Ta was about to head to the Tian Yuan continent on the Wasteland continent when he suddenly paused. After hesitating slightly, he changed his direction and headed to the elves. The arrival of the war god shook up the elves. Everyone came to receive him politely. In the end, Tai Ta entered the forbidden grounds of the elves under the personal lead of the Elven Queen. "Wait for me outside the forbidden grounds," Tai Ta said to the Elven Queen with a deep, muffled voice. "Yes, sir," the Elven Queen replied politely. She stood outside the forbidden grounds obediently and waited. Tai Ta wore golden robes within the forbidden grounds, making him seem majestic. He stood before the elven god tree, silently as a gleam of light shone in his eyes. He raised his head and carefully studied the tree of life that had existed for a very long time. At this moment, an illusionary figure condensed from green life force appeared before the elven tree. As her figure was just too illusionary, apart from the fact that she was a woman, it was impossible to see her appearance at all. Aladona of the God clan greets the great war god. The illusionary woman knelt on the ground and buried her head deep into the ground. She kowtowed to Tai Ta as she spoke extremely politely. Tai Ta stood there as his majestic golden robes gently fluttered in the wind. He looked at the illusionary woman and asked, "Who are you?" Tai Ta already knew that the elven god tree was extraordinary, but his understanding of it was nowhere near as great as Jianchen and the Spirit King. At the very least, he still did not know Aladona's true identity, nor did he know that Aladona, the mighty divine king, had descended to the lower world all because of him, the war god. Aladona did not hide anything. She explained her identity and origins, which immediately stunned Tai Ta. "You're actually a divine king? And the greatest divine king of the god clan? Are you lying to me?" Tai Ta asked in disbelief. Back then, just the Spirit King, who had barely reached godhood, had already brought so much pressure to the Tian Yuan continent. As for the divine king, he was an unreachable existence. In particular, such a powerful divine king was actually kneeling before him right now. Tai Ta found this to be unreal. Everything I've said is true. I wouldn't dare to lie to the great war god at all. Aladona's forehead had almost touched the ground. Her respect came from the bottom of her heart. She was not faking it at all. Tai Ta sucked in a deep breath and said, "Why didn't you come out to see me when I came here in the past? Why didn't you even say anything to me? Also, why did you call me here just now?" "It was because the time was not right in the past, so I did not come to see the war god. Please forgive me. I've come to see the war god this time because of the spirit sages," said Aladona. "The spirit sages?" Tai Ta was puzzled. The spirit sages are from the world of forsaken saints. Although I don't know why the spirit sages have appeared here. They're a remnant of the spirit's world. They're a large race in the saints' world. Although they've declined now, they still possess quite the heritage. I've learned that the war god has come to the Tian Yuan continent this time to compete for territory with the spirit sages, which is why I've come to see the war god. I beg the war god to rope in the spirit sages. They'll be of great assistance to our god clan in the future, said Aladona. On the Tianyuan continent, the city lord's estate of the flame mercenaries had all been cleared away. Only the most elite guards remained outside. Although the defenses of the city lord's estate had been reduced to the lowest level since the beginning of time, the forces gathered inside were the greatest they had ever gathered. Yang Lai, Guihai Idao, Feng Xiaotian, Houston, Poseidon, and the other Origin Realm experts had come to the decision of using the city lord's estate as the venue for negotiations. Not only did they need to ensure their safety during the negotiations, but they also needed to strike fear into the hearts of the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. There were only 3 places in the world that could fulfill this requirement. The first was the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City, the second was 3 Saint Island, and the third was Flame City. The Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City was an extremely powerful treasure. If the negotiations were held there, the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints would definitely not enter. As for 3 Saint Island, Yang Lai and the others were not confident that they could convince Shangguan Mu, so they could only hold the negotiations in Flame City. Chapter 1640. Under Xiongzhong's lead, close to 20 Origin Realm elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints had gathered in the city, Lord's Estate in Flame City. Only a portion of the elders and protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints had entered the city to participate in the negotiations. Other than the protectors and elders in the city, Lord's Estate, there were over a dozen Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints outside. If something happened during the negotiations that led to a battle, the people outside would provide support. On the Tianyuan continent side, Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, Guihai Idao, Houston, Xiao Jin, Xiao Ling, the White Tiger, Tai Ta, Poseidon, and the 4 brothers had all arrived. All the Origin Realm experts from the 4 races aside from Jianqin and Shangguan Mu were present. Everyone understood that the world of Forsaken Saints was not only asking for the territory of the Tianyuan continent, but also the territory of the 3 other races. As a result, the 100 races, the magical beasts, and the sea race would all participate, let alone the tremendous population of the world of Forsaken Saints. Just giving up a portion of the Tianyuan continent's territory was not enough to satisfy them. Moreover, if the Tianyuan continent gave up a portion of their territory and the 3 other races did not, the humans of the Tianyuan continent would find it unfair. As a result, the humans of the Tianyuan continent and the 3 other races had already discussed the matter of giving up a portion of their territory to the world of Forsaken Saints. However, they still needed to reach an agreement on the exact amount. They were not giving up the territory this time because of how powerful the world of Forsaken Saints was. Instead, it was because of their great contribution in stopping the crisis of the world. Several tens of thousands of sainthood experts, several receival experts, and a returnance elder had sacrificed themselves, allowing the primordial god silk in Jianqin's hands to possess sufficient power, allowing it to survive the crisis and save all the lives in the world. The Origin Realm experts of the 2 worlds sat across each other in the city, Lord's Estate. All of them were stern, as the world of Forsaken Saints had invaded the Tianyuan continent before. They had accumulated some grievances. As a result, they did not exchange any pleasantries when they met, causing the atmosphere in the city, Lord's Estate, to become rather heavy. Xiongzhong glanced past the experts of the 4 races before him. When he discovered that Shangguan Mu was not present, he could not help but let out a sigh of relief. After a moment of hesitation, he asked, "May I ask if all of your people have arrived? Can we begin the negotiations between our 2 worlds?" Aside from Xiao Jin and Xiao Ling, who studied the experts from the world of Forsaken Saints curiously, everyone else looked at each other sternly. The status of the Origin Realm experts of this world was slightly different from the Origin Realm experts of the world of Forsaken Saints. The world of Forsaken Saints was like a tremendous empire, and the Spirit King was the emperor, the absolute ruler. The other Origin Realm experts were divided into protectors and elders according to their strength. If the Spirit King was not present, the only other person from the world of Forsaken Saints who had reached reciprocity, Xiongzhong, would be the leader. On the other hand, the Origin Realm experts of the four races were all sovereigns on the Tianyuan continent side. Even though there was a great disparity in strength, they all possessed the same status. None of them had the right to order anyone else around. Now that Xiongzhong had asked a question, the first person to answer would possess a special level of significance. The first person to speak would obviously have some degree of authority in the negotiations between the two worlds. Gradually, more and more gazes gathered on Tai Ta. Now that Shangguan Mu was not present, Tai Ta obviously became the most powerful person present with his strength. It would be more appropriate for him to speak at a time like this. Tai Ta also realized what everyone was thinking, so he just closed his eyes and expressed that he wanted to be a listener. He knew his limits. He knew that he only had talent for battle and did not have the ability to negotiate. It's a pity that Shangguan Mu isn't present. Houston, you'll be the temporary representative for the negotiations this time. May I ask if the others have any objections? The sea goddess transmitted her voice to everyone. She directly named Houston, who was dressed in sackcloth and whose hands were still stained with mud. Houston's strength was extraordinary, and he had experience as a leader. The Blood Sword sect had once shaken up the entire Tianyuan continent under his leadership. He was a resourceful person. Naturally, no one had any objections to letting Houston be the negotiator for this realm for the time being. In terms of strategy, there might not necessarily be anyone who could surpass Houston. It was just that ever since Houston went into seclusion 1,000 years ago, he had hidden all of his sharpness and lived an extremely low-key life. If he acted as the negotiator, everyone believed that he would do his utmost to protect the interests of this realm. After all, the amount of land the world of Forsaken Saints needed to be resolved through negotiations. Houston nodded slightly. At that moment, his eyes were no longer gloomy and cloudy. Instead, they had become brighter. A sharp light flashed through his eyes as he said to Xiongzhong, "If it were not for the crisis of the world, we would have fought to the death if your world of Forsaken Saints wanted to invade our land. It would be very difficult to say who would emerge victorious in the end. After all, your Spirit King is no longer invincible." Xiongzhong and the other elders frowned slightly when they heard that. A sliver of displeasure appeared on their faces, but they couldn't find any words to refute Houston's words because he was telling the truth. The reason why we're able to sit at the negotiation table this time is because of the great contributions that the tens of thousands of people from your world of Forsaken Saints have made for the crisis of the world. Their sacrifice is admirable, and it's exactly because of their great contributions that the four races of our world have agreed to give up a portion of our land to your world of Forsaken Saints. However, the land won't be very large, so I hope you can be mentally prepared," said Houston. "This is a map we've prepared. We've already marked out the regions we want. Take a look. If you have no objections, we can reach an agreement as soon as possible," Xiongzhong said emotionlessly. At the same time, he took out a few blueprints that he had already drawn up. Under his control, the blueprints slowly flew before all the Origin Realm experts of the four races. When the Origin Realm experts opened the maps, all of them frowned aside from Tai Ta, Xiaojin, Xiaoling, and the four brothers. This was because the regions marked out on Xiongzhong's map actually took up half of the territory of each race. Coincidentally, we've prepared a map as well. It's also marked out the other regions we'll be giving to your world of Forsaken Saints. "Please take a look," said Houston before passing a map to Xiongzhong. They had prepared several maps like this. Every single one of them had been created after the Origin Realm experts of the four races had discussed it. The regions marked out on each map were different as well. P.S. Chapter 1641. Xiongzhong took the map and slowly spread it out. This map was made from the fur of a high-grade magic beast. It clearly depicted all the mountains and rivers of this world, including all the regions of the 4 major races. And on this map, there were a few regions that were marked with red circles. Each region, marked by a red circle, occupied a small territory of the 4 major races. When Xiongzhong saw the regions outlined by the red circles, his eyebrows immediately furrowed, and his expression became somewhat ugly. Soon after, he passed the map in his hand to the Protector Elders beside him. Without exception, all the Protector Elders frowned when they saw the map, and their faces were filled with displeasure. The contribution of our world of Forsaken Saints is so great that it's only below Sovereign Jianchen of your world. It's even enough to rival Sovereign Jianchen, because if it weren't for the sacrifice of the tens of thousands of people from our world, even with Jianchen's existence, it would have been useless in the end. Are you on the path to destruction? We've protected your world and saved countless lives in your world, yet you're only willing to give up a tiny bit of land after we've contributed so much. Aren't you going a little too far? Xiongzhong growled. He understood that the Tianyuan continent no longer feared the world of Forsaken Saints. Under such circumstances, the only way to obtain a piece of land in this world was through negotiations other than through war. This was the only time they would be able to negotiate, so it would be very difficult for them to change their decision in the future. As a result, whether it was Xiongzhong or all the protectors and elders stationed in this world, they had already made up their minds. They would try their best to obtain as many benefits as possible while maintaining peace. This was because it would directly affect the future of the world of Forsaken Saints. It was extremely important. Houston gently coughed when he heard Xiongzhong's words. He said, "Your world of Forsaken Saints has played a great role in stopping the crisis of the world, but there's one thing you're wrong about. Our world is not the only one affected by the crisis. Your world of Forsaken Saints is affected as well. Our world is at the very front of the battle. Once our world fails to stop the crisis, your world of Forsaken Saints will be doomed as well. In the face of the great calamity of the world, our 2 worlds are grasshoppers on the same rope. We're bound together for good or ill. So I hope you don't think of yourselves as heroes who have saved our world, because we are all saving ourselves." Houston said indifferently. The expressions of all the protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints became rather ugly when they heard that. Houston's words seemed to have stripped them of all the contributions they had made in stopping the crisis of the world. Before the people from the world of Forsaken Saints could reply, Houston continued, "In reality, no matter what contributions your world of Forsaken Saints has made, there's no need for us to give you any land at all because Jianchen played a leading role in stopping the crisis. If it were not for Jianchen's treasure, no matter how special your bloodline is, you would not have been able to avoid the fate of being devoured by the crisis. The reason why we agreed to give you some land after the war was to complete their final wishes and allow them to rest in peace." On the negotiation table, both sides were arguing fiercely about the issue of territory. Both sides could say a lot of things, and neither side was willing to give way to the other. Fortunately, the Origin Realm experts of both worlds were fearful of each other. As a result, both sides intentionally controlled their emotions to avoid a situation where they began to fight even though the argument was very intense. The Tianyuan continent feared the number of Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints and Xiongzhong who had reached reciprocity. The protectors and elders from the world of Forsaken Saints feared Shangguanmu, on 3 Saint Island. Although Shangguanmu was not present and 3 Saint Island was tens of millions of kilometers away from Flame City, they could cross that distance with a single step with their strength. Very soon, the first day of negotiations came to an end. Neither side made any progress after that day of negotiations. The people from the Tianyuan continent were determined to give up as little land as possible, while the protectors from the world of Forsaken Saints wanted a piece of land that they were satisfied with no matter what. Naturally, the two sides were unable to reach an agreement. The Arctic tundra was not within the territory of the Tianyuan continent, and it was also far away from Three Saint Island. A golden divine hall stood silently on the tundra. Within the divine hall, all the protectors and elders from the world of forsaken saints had gathered there. This world has gone too far. Our world of forsaken saints has contributed so much against the crisis of the world, yet they're saying that we're worthless. They're only willing to give us a tiny bit of land. Our population is so great, so the tiny bit of land they're offering is nowhere near enough, a protector furiously said. The people in the hall fell silent. Their complexions were very ugly. They had understood the attitude of the Tianyuan continent after the first day of negotiations. Clearly, it would not be easy for them to obtain more land in this world. It's a pity that the Spirit King isn't here, so we have to be cautious during the negotiations. We don't dare to offend the people of this world. Even if we ignore the fact that Shangguanmu is watching over us, there's the even more terrifying Jianqin right above us. He's no weaker than the Spirit King. If Jianqin suddenly emerges, an elder said with a heavy voice. His face paled slightly as he reached the end of his sentence. Xiongzhong gently sighed. That's true. Although Jianqin is in seclusion, no one knows when he'll emerge. If he suddenly emerges and wants to deal with us, none of us will be able to make it back to the world of forsaken saints alive. I think we should delay the negotiations until the Spirit King arrives. The Origin Realm experts of the four races remained in Flame City on the Tianyuan continent. After the first day of negotiations, they gathered together once again. Only Xiao Jin, Xiaoling, and the four brothers, who did not care about the matter of land, were not present. The six of them had left after the negotiations had concluded. The world of forsaken saints sure is greedy. The land they want is just far too large. How can we give up such a large piece of land so easily? After all, they're not people of our world, Gui Haidao said with a heavy voice. The negotiations regarding land can't be concluded in a day or two. In my opinion, let's delay the negotiations until Jianqin emerges. We'll ask him for his opinion. After all, if it weren't for the fact that Jianqin possessed the strength to fend off the Spirit King, we wouldn't have the right to negotiate with the world of forsaken saints, Poseidon said. All right, let's delay the negotiations until my great-grandson emerges from seclusion. After all, my great-grandson has the greatest right to speak, Yang Lai chuckled. Yang Lai said with a smile. When he talked about his great-grandson, there was an unconcealable pride between his brows. Yang Lai, you seem to be afraid that we don't know that Jianqin is your descendant. Don't be so complacent, Gui Haidao sneered. Gui Haidao jokingly scolded from the side. He was really jealous that Yang Lai had such a heaven-defying descendant. A huge, blood-red cloud hovered in outer space. Jianqin sat within the cloud as the essence of the cloud condensed in the surroundings, turning into a red mist that was even darker in color. It permeated Jianqin's surroundings and was absorbed through Jianqin's pores, through his breathing. After the red mist entered Jianqin's body, it was rapidly converted into chaotic force. The rate at which it was refined was clearly much faster than before. At this moment, the chaotic Niden in Jianqin's dantian was no longer the same as when he had just broken through to the 8th layer. His chaotic Niden slowly grew as he constantly refined the energy in the cloud. Even though the growth was very slow, every tiny bit of growth meant that he was one step closer to the 9th layer of chaotic force. I might be able to break through to the 9th layer of the chaotic body here. When I break through to the 8th layer, my cultivation will be equivalent to reaching early reciprocity from receival, skipping returnants. However, if I reach the 9th layer here, just what level of cultivation will my chaotic body reach? Will I reach peak reciprocity, or will I directly break through to godhood? Jianqin thought. At the same time, he was filled with eagerness. The 8th layer of the chaotic body gave him battle prowess at godhood, but that was only battle prowess. His original cultivation was only at early reciprocity, so just what level would his battle prowess reach if he also reached godhood? Chapter 1642. The negotiations regarding territory between the Tian Yuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints would be held once every 10 days or half a month. However, since the two sides were never able to reach an agreement, the negotiations would always end on bad terms. Flame City's reputation skyrocketed once again as the place where the future of the two worlds would be negotiated. It rapidly rose, reaching a new level of fame. Not only did everyone on the Tian Yuan continent know about it, but even across the vast territory of the world of Forsaken Saints, there are very few people who did not know about Flame City. The Origin Realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent had chosen Flame City as the location of the negotiations because they feared the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. They planned on using Flame City to intimidate the Origin Realm experts from the world of Forsaken Saints so that they would not dare to take action during the negotiations. If they destroyed Flame City, they would directly offend Jianshin. At the same time, the actions of the Origin Realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent had indirectly increased the status of Flame City. Although the current Flame City could not compare to the 7 great capital cities in terms of scale, there was no organization in this world that could match up to it in terms of prestige. The current Flame City was as great as the sacred spirit hall of the world of Forsaken Saints. It possessed an irreplaceable status in this world. The Heavenly Enchantress was a beauty on Three Saint Island. Her beauty was even greater than that of a goddess. She sat on a large azure rock on the mountain peak with an otherworldly presence. The simple zither of the demonic cry was placed before her. As her slender fingers slowly plucked the strings, she played a heavenly melody. The music seemed to have fused with nature, possessing an ethereal quality. It could not help but calm down as soon as it reached the ears. The sound of the zither reverberated through the air above Three Saint Island, causing the fishermen who lived on the island to become mesmerized. There were even large, fat fish that had floated to the surface of the sea in the distance. They seemed to have become mesmerized by the sound of the zither. Beside the Heavenly Enchantress sat a handsome young man. However, the young man was not affected by the zither at all. He stared at the deep blue sea in front of him, at the distant Tian Yuan continent, and at the clear sky above him from time to time. The young man could vaguely make out a small patch of red clouds at the end of the blue sky. However, the red was not something that could be seen with the eyes of ordinary people. After a long while, the music ended. Shangguan Mu stowed the zither away and glanced at outer space with her enchanting eyes. She murmured, "The evil power has weakened slightly. Your father should be absorbing the power in seclusion, but at this rate, it'll take quite some time for him to absorb all of it." The handsome young man looked at Shangguan Mu, or when he heard that, he said with some worry, "Mother, the power is so evil and so powerful. Will father be in danger if he absorbs it?" Shangguan Mu sank into her thoughts. She said, "Your father's cultivation method is as special as yours. It can't be measured by common sense. Moreover, he knows when to stop. Since he's bold enough to absorb it, he must have absolute confidence." "Then I don't have to worry." The young man immediately let out a sigh of relief. He was Shangguan Aojin. After a moment of thought, Shangguan Aojin continued, "Mother, the Tian Yuan continent is currently negotiating with the world of Forsaken Saints. The difference between the Origin Realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints is still very large, so they might be at a disadvantage during the negotiations. They need you right now, so why don't you go to the Tian Yuan continent?" Shangguan Aojin also hoped that his mother could go to the Tian Yuan continent very much, because he had grown attached to the continent during his travels there. He obviously did not wish for the Tian Yuan continent to suffer too much during the negotiations with the world of Forsaken Saints. Moreover, the Tian Yuan continent was his father's homeland. Shangguan Mu looked at Shangguan Aojin, and a sliver of gentleness appeared in her eyes. She said, Xiao Bao, I know you're worried about the Tianyuan continent, but your worries are unnecessary. Let alone the fact that the Tianyuan continent isn't at a disadvantage, the negotiations between the two sides won't end in a short amount of time. However, no matter what kind of agreement they reach during the negotiations, the final decision will still be made by the Spirit King and your father. If your father doesn't agree, no matter how great of an advantage the world of Forsaken Saints gains during the negotiations, it won't count in the end. Do you understand? Mother, I understand. With our current strength, we don't need to fear the world of Forsaken Saints at all. Time flew like an arrow. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed since the first negotiation between the two worlds. Both sides still failed to reach an agreement after 10 years of negotiations. They both understood that it would be very difficult for them to reach an agreement that would satisfy both sides. In the end, they could only wait for the strongest person of the two worlds to make the decision. As a result, the two worlds only went through the motions in the following negotiations, stalling for time and waiting for the Spirit King and Jianqin to emerge from seclusion. In the past 10 years, the matter of the Tianyuan continent, the Wasteland continent, the 100 races, and the Sea race dividing up a portion of their land spread like wildfire. It caused quite a stir. Some people did not care about this matter, but there were also some people who wanted to defend their land and defend their homeland with their lives. Ever since the Tianyuan continent had been shattered in the battle against the world of Forsaken Saints, it had been split into 4 regions, which were the eastern, southern, western, and northern regions. The regions were separated by an extremely wide river. The river formed a cross that ran through the entire continent and connected to the sea. The place where the 4 rivers intersected was the ruins of Mercenary City. It was now filled with a large amount of water, but there was an extremely special region there. A mysterious power protected the region, preventing the surrounding seawater from entering. This special region was the tunnel that connected the Tianyuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints. At this moment, the tunnel was completely calm. After so many years, the tunnel had stabilized long ago. Although there would be powerful ripples of spatial energy in the tunnel from time to time, they would not be like when it had just formed, where large amounts of violent energy would surge out and fly into outer space. At this moment, the stable spatial tunnel suddenly began to ripple. The ripples rapidly expanded, and in the end, it actually caused a huge reaction from the entire tunnel. The entire tunnel began to shake violently, and extremely unstable streams of violent energy wreaked havoc within. Very soon, a figure gradually appeared in the extremely unstable flow of energy in the tunnel. The figure was very blurry at first, but as he approached, his figure gradually became clearer. He was a middle-aged man with a head of flowing black hair. He carried a dark, metal sword on his back. His appearance was nothing special, and he seemed extremely ordinary. His clothes were very simple as well, giving off a sense of simplicity. The middle-aged man was indifferent. Even though he seemed extremely simple, he gave off a dignified presence. He walked through the tunnel step by step, and as he advanced, the entire tunnel trembled. Violent streams of energy were constantly produced, wreaking havoc in the tunnel. However, when the streams of energy that were enough to heavily injure the Holy Emperor approached the middle-aged man, they were silently reduced to nothingness. In the end, no streams of energy remained within 10 meters of the middle-aged man. The changes in the tunnel were not purposefully caused by the middle-aged man. He was just too powerful. As he walked through the tunnel, he seemed to have reached the limit of what the tunnel could endure, which was why the tunnel had changed. Even though he had concealed his origin energy and presence, he was unable to avoid this situation. The middle-aged man did not move quickly, but he crossed a great distance with each step. In just a short while, he emerged from the tunnel and appeared in the sky above the Tianyuan continent. Suddenly, the Tianyuan continent began to churn. The thick layer of clouds in the sky was silently reduced to nothingness, as if it had been forcefully crushed by a terrifying pressure, disappearing from the world. At the same time, a terrifying pressure permeated the surroundings, enveloping the entire world in a single moment. It shocked everyone and made all the beasts in the surroundings prostrate themselves before it. The expressions of all the Origin Realm experts from the world of forsaken saints within the Golden Divine Hall changed. Soon afterward, joy filled their faces. It's the Spirit King. It's the Spirit King's presence. The Spirit King has emerged. Quick, let's go support the Spirit King. The Origin Realm experts from the world of forsaken saints all cried out in joy. They charged out of the Divine Hall as quickly as they could and hurried toward the tunnel. In the past few years, all of them had felt extremely frustrated. They had to negotiate with the Origin Realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent. They clearly did not treat the Origin Realm experts with any importance and could easily wipe them out, yet they did not dare to raise their voices. As a result, the negotiations had gone on for 10 whole years without any results. This was because the Tian Yuan continent had Shangguan, Mu, Jianqin, who had emerged from seclusion at some point, and the Spirit King was not present. As a result, their negotiations with the Tian Yuan continent were restricted. Now that the Spirit King had emerged, the Origin Realm experts from the world of forsaken saints all gained confidence. They were obviously overjoyed now that they had someone to rely on. At the same time, the Origin Realm experts of the 4 races opened their eyes at the same time in Flame City. They all stared in the direction of the tunnel as they became extremely stern. Shangguan Mu's eyes narrowed as well. She stared in the direction of the Tian Yuan continent as a sliver of sternness appeared on her face. Chapter 1643. Welcome, Spirit King. With Xiongzhong in the lead, all the Origin Realm elders and protectors from the world of forsaken saints hurried over as soon as possible. All of them bowed politely to the Spirit King. They could not be described as slow. In less than 2 seconds, all of them had crossed over 10 million kilometers from the moment the Spirit King stepped out of the tunnel. The Spirit King remained indifferent. He glanced past them before raising his head to look at the sky. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through space, landing on the blood-red cloud that hovered in outer space like a sharp sword. He frowned slightly. Jianqin still hasn't emerged from seclusion, the Spirit King murmured. His voice was rather heavy. He then looked at Xiongzhong and asked emotionlessly, Xiongzhong, how have the negotiations gone in the past 10 years? Xiongzhong bitterly replied, Spirit King, the people of this world have always insisted on giving us a small piece of land, which is nowhere close to what we're satisfied with. Coupled with the fact that we have Jianqin and Shangguan Mu on 3 Saint Island, while our world of forsaken saints doesn't have the support of the Spirit King. We've been holding back during the negotiations. We haven't dared to fall out with the people of this world, so we haven't made any actual progress in the past 10 years. If that's the case, let me talk to the people of this world, the Spirit King said emotionlessly. His voice was rather cold. At this moment, the space nearby gently pulsed. Soon after, all the Origin Realm experts of the 4 races appeared. They were all very stern as they faced the Spirit King. After appearing, they all clasped their hands at him. They had no choice but to come. At the very least, there was no one here. It was better than the Spirit King personally coming to Flame City. You've come at just the right time. Let's end the negotiations that have lasted for 10 years today. Xiongzhong, hand over the map of your territory to them, said the Spirit King. Yes, Spirit King, Xiongzhong replied politely. He casually tossed a map to the Origin Realm experts of this world. Big baddie. Xiao Ling murmured to herself as she glared at the Spirit King viciously. Even though the Spirit King had once fought alongside the people of this world during the crisis of the world, Xiao Ling could never forget the huge demonic figure the Spirit King had created when he attacked the barrier beneath Mercenary City. She had been quite frightened back then. The piece of paper that Xiongzhong had tossed out hovered beside the Origin Realm experts of the Tian Yuan continent. The Origin Realm experts all revealed troubled expressions. None of them extended their hands to catch the piece of paper. Spirit King, There's no need to rush this matter. We'll discuss it after Jianshin returns. What do you think? At this moment, a beautiful voice rang out. Shangguan Mu had also hurried over from 3 Saint Island. She stood in the air with the simple zither of the demonic cry in her arms. She was stern. If Jianshin were present, I would obviously discuss it with him. Since he's still in seclusion, you people are enough to decide on the matter of land in this world. It's the same if I discuss it with you, said the Spirit King. The origin realm experts of the Tianyuan continent's world all revealed rather ugly expressions. Negotiating with the Spirit King? They did not possess the strength to do so, let alone protect their own interests. The strong preyed on the weak. This was the law of survival in this world. If the Spirit King wanted to start a war with them, if he was a vicious person, it was possible for the Spirit King to personally kill them if they angered him during the negotiations. After all, the only person who could contend against the Spirit King, Jianshin, was not present. If the Spirit King really did move against them, only death would await them. Even Shangguan Mu would not be able to escape. Just as the origin realm experts of the Tianyuan continent had no idea what to do, a voice suddenly rang out from outer space. Shen Jian, why don't we discuss the matter of land after I emerge from seclusion? Your world of forsaken saints has been here for countless years already, so there's no need to rush. Jianshin. It's Jianshin. That's Jianshin's voice. Jianshin has finally spoken. So he's concerned about the Tianyuan continent as well. The origin realm experts of the Tianyuan continent all rejoiced when they heard Jianshin's voice. They all let out a sigh of relief inside. Unknowingly, Jianshin seemed to have become their pillar of support. In particular, Jianshin had become their pillar of support when they faced the Spirit King. The Spirit King gazed at outer space as his eyes shone brightly. He said emotionlessly, Jianshin, if you enter seclusion for 1,000 years, am I supposed to wait for you here for 1,000 years? Also, are you going into seclusion to obtain even more benefits in the upcoming negotiations? 1,000 years? It won't be that long. I'll emerge in 10 years at most. Xinjian, I understand you, and you understand me as well. Whether my strength increases or not, it won't affect the final outcome of the negotiations. It's all thanks to the people of your world of forsaken saints that we were able to avert the crisis of the world this time. I admire their valiant sacrifice, so I will definitely help them complete their final wishes so that they can rest in peace. This is my promise to you, Jianshin, as well as my promise to all the forsaken saints who have sacrificed themselves. The light in the Spirit King's eyes flickered. He said, all right, seeing that we're acquainted, I'll wait another 10 years for you. I'll come again in 10 years. With that, the Spirit King returned to the world of forsaken saints with Xiongzhong and the others. Aside from him and Jianshin, no one else understood what he was implying. Only he and Jianshin understood what he was implying. The origin realm experts of the world of forsaken saints all exhaled deeply when they saw the Spirit King lead all the origin realm experts back to the world of forsaken saints. They were completely at ease now. They felt like they had almost suffocated from the Spirit King's suppression earlier. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 8 years had passed since Jianshin and the Spirit King had agreed on a 10-year agreement. A total of 18 years had passed since Jianshin had entered seclusion in the blood-red cloud. 18 years was quite a long period of time to ordinary people. It was enough for a child to grow up, but to sainthood and origin realm experts with long lifespans, 18 years was just a short period of seclusion. The blood-red cloud hovering in outer space did not disappear, but its volume had shrunk rapidly. It was not even 1/10 of its original size. In particular, the ripples of energy within the blood-red cloud had become extremely weak. Jianshin sat in the blood-red cloud as he cultivated. After absorbing the terrifying energy from the blood-red cloud, his Naiden had grown to a limit. This was the limit of the 8th layer of the chaotic body. Chapter 1644. Afterwards, Jian experienced the pain of shattering his core to refine his body again. It was the same experience, the same pain. This was the 9th time he had experienced it. He had already accumulated a wealth of experience from shattering his core to refine his body the previous 8 times. So the 9th time was a walk in the park for Jian. It was as easy as lifting a finger. As Jian's chaotic force gradually strengthened, a vast and terrifying presence radiated from him. It caused the entire cloud to churn violently. The presence even expanded beyond the cloud, filling the surrounding space. It caused the space there to distort violently as the stars flickered. Cracks had even appeared in the space several dozen meters around Jian. The cracks were formed from the crushing of space by Jian's presence. At this moment, Jian's presence was so vast and powerful that it had completely surpassed early reciprocity or even mid-reciprocity. Even late reciprocity experts would struggle to match it. It had surpassed the limits of what this world could endure long ago. At the same time, his presence continued to climb. Jian's disturbance in outer space naturally did not escape the attention of the origin realm experts of the Tianyuan continent. At that moment, all of them raised their heads at the same time. They looked at the floating cloud in outer space. What a terrifying presence! Has Jian broken through again after 18 years of seclusion? Tai Ta sighed in amazement as he cultivated in the War God Hall. With a flash, he vanished from the War God Hall. Gue Hai Idao Yang Lai and Feng Shaotian gathered together on the Tianyuan continent. Gue Hai Idao stared at outer space with mixed feelings and said, Jian was already extremely powerful. He no longer feared the Spirit King who was at godhood. Now that he's broken through again, I really wonder just how shocking his strength will be after breaking through. What a terrifying talent! Feng Shaotian muttered to himself as a look of shock appeared on his face. He's actually broken through again. My great-grandson sure is impressive. However, his strength has increased so quickly in the past few years that I hope it won't leave behind any side effects and cause his foundation to become unstable. Yang Lai laughed aloud. His face was filled with pride, but there was also a sliver of worry. Jian's strength had increased just too quickly. Even Yang Lai, who had lived for so long and experienced so many storms, found it rather difficult to bear with such a rate of growth. Fantastic! Big Brother has become stronger again. You don't have to worry about that bad guy anymore. That bad guy is no longer Big Brother's opponent. Xiao Ling clapped her hands excitedly. Xiao Ling clapped her hands as she bounced up and down. She was extremely excited. Xiao, Jean, and the little white tiger, who were also in Flame City, smiled happily as well. All the Origin Realm experts of the Tianyuan continent gathered 100 kilometers away from the blood-red cloud in outer space. It was almost 10 years away from the negotiation with the Spirit King. If Jian's strength could break through now, it would be extremely meaningful for the negotiation. All the Origin Realm experts hovered in the distance. They did not approach the blood-red cloud. They quietly waited for Jian to emerge from seclusion. They knew that Jian would emerge soon. Several days later, Jian's presence slowly receded within the blood-red cloud. He gradually calmed down, and the fist-sized chaotic Niden in his dantian shrank to the size of a bean once again. It had shrunk, but the chaotic force within it was clearly much more powerful than the 8th layer. Jian smiled. Originally, he thought that reaching the 8th layer of the chaotic body was his limit in this world, but he had never thought that the evil spirit would actually leave him with a fortuitous encounter after dealing with the crisis of the world, allowing his chaotic body to reach the 9th layer. This was definitely a pleasant surprise. However, at this moment, Jian's face suddenly changed. In the next moment, a presence filled with brutality suddenly radiated from his body. There was also a sense of destruction and evilness within it. His eyes became red at that moment, and even his hair rapidly turned from black to blood red. As a result, Jian seemed to be filled with evilness, like a demon. At this moment, Jianchen felt like his consciousness had become blurry. All that remained in his heart was endless slaughter and destruction. It was as if he had become an existence that only knew slaughter and destruction. He did not fear the heavens or the earth. He would kill gods and destroy Buddhas if gods stood in his way. He had no feelings or pity at all. Kacha! With an almost undetectable sound, a tiny crack suddenly appeared on the bean-sized chaotic Naiden in Jianchen's dantian. The cracking of the Naiden was accompanied by intense pain. The pain made Jianchen shudder, and he suddenly roused. The redness in his eyes gradually receded, and his hair, which had almost turned blood red, returned to its original black color. Even though Jianchen's change had only lasted for a few seconds, the Origin Realm experts who were still waiting outside sensed the sudden change in his presence. What is this presence? Why is it so terrifying? Could it be that the origin of the calamity hasn't been destroyed yet? The sea goddess said in a deep voice. Everyone gathered there became extremely solemn. Did something happen to Jianchen during his cultivation? Feng Xiaotian asked with a heavy voice. Everyone's faces became very ugly when they heard that. Even though they were doubtful, none of them dared to enter the blood-red cloud to check. They were not as powerful as Jianchen and the Spirit King. Even though the cloud had weakened, it still posed a certain level of threat to them. Most importantly, Jianchen was still in seclusion. They were afraid that they would disturb Jianchen if they barged in. Jianchen was stern in the blood-red cloud. He had sensed his change earlier as well. Coupled with the crack in his chaotic Naiden, it was clear that something had happened to him when he reached the 9th layer of the chaotic body. Jianchen stared at the blood-red cloud and said with a heavy voice, "It looks like the energy from the crisis of the world can't be absorbed so easily. After all, the crisis of the world is a special existence that even the laws of the world can't do anything about. Even if I cultivate the chaotic body, it'll still cause me some trouble because the crisis of the world is even more powerful than I am right now. If my strength was far greater than the crisis of the world, I believe I wouldn't have any problems absorbing the energy and would be able to refine it easily. However, I need to understand just what kind of problems I've left behind so that I can think of a way to deal with them." Jianchen immediately checked his body. Although the chaotic Naiden in his dantian had cracked, he did not pay too much attention to it. His chaotic Naiden was not perfect and had affected his strength, so he could only use 80% of it. However, even then, it was still much more powerful than when he was at the 8th layer of the chaotic body. What he truly cared about was the change in his consciousness earlier. This was what scared Jianchen. Chapter 1645. Jianchen carefully checked his body several times, not missing a single corner. In the end, he finally discovered something different in his soul, because there was now a speck of blood-red light that should not have existed in his soul. The blood-red light was very dim, and it had already silently merged with his soul. If one did not pay attention, it would be very difficult to discover its existence. The speck of red light did not pose any threat to Jianchen. It had silently fused with his soul, so Jianchen failed to sense it at all. It did not cause any discomfort to Jianchen at all, so this is the main culprit. A cold light flickered through Jianchen's eyes as his face became extremely sunken. He carefully thought back to every single detail during his 18 years of seclusion and understood very soon that he had not completely refined the evil presence within the energy of the blood-red clouds. Although the energy had all been converted into the chaotic body in the end, the evil presence that had not been completely refined had silently seeped into his soul. Although this speck of red light filled with negative emotions can affect my mind at certain moments, it's not enough to make my chaotic Naiden crack. It looks like my chaotic Naiden has some flaws and is not complete. At the end of the day, it's still because I'm too weak. If I had refined the power of the blood-red energy at the 9th layer, or even the 10th layer of the chaotic body, this might not have happened, Jianchen thought. A vicious light flashed through Jianchen's eyes. With a thought, the 2 pieces of primordial god silk appeared on his wrist. I need to deal with the problems in my soul immediately, or the consequences will be unthinkable if my mind is affected at some point in time. The red light in my soul comes from the energy of the crisis of the world, so the power of the primordial god silk is the best counter for destroying it, Jianqin thought. With a thought, the two pieces of primordial god silk turned into a golden streak of light and disappeared into Jianqin's forehead. It had entered his sea of consciousness. Jianqin had not refined the primordial god silk in the past, so he could only keep it in his space ring for a very long time. However, he had refined it now that the primordial god silk was fending off the crisis of the world. As a result, not only could the primordial god silk hide in his body, but he could even make it enter his sea of consciousness without any difficulty. Although there was not much power left in the primordial god silk, there was still a sliver left. This time, Jianqin used the last sliver of power without any hesitation in an attempt to destroy the speck of red light in his soul. Fortunately, the primordial god silk was under Jianqin's complete control now. Coupled with the fact that the power of the primordial god silk was basically harmless aside from countering the crisis of the world, Jianqin did not have to worry about the power of the primordial god silk harming his soul. However, Jianqin's heart sank very soon. He discovered that not only was the power of the primordial god silk unable to destroy the speck of red light in his soul, but it also posed no threat to the speck of red light at all. Oh no, this speck of red light comes from the power of the calamity of the world. But the power of the calamity of the world has changed as I refined it. This change has allowed it to break free from the restraints of the primordial god silk. Now, the power of the primordial god silk is no longer a threat to it, Jianqin muttered to himself. Jianqin's face became extremely sunken. His joy and joy from breaking through to the 9th layer completely vanished. He really did not dare to imagine what would happen if his mind was affected one day and he went on a killing spree on the Tianyuan continent. Jianqin could not help but shiver. He became covered in cold sweat from fright. This time, he felt a chill run down his spine. His entire soul trembled in fear. At the same time, Shangguan Mu Shangguan Aojin, Yu, Huangwan, Changyangba, Bai Yuntian, Chongwuji, Dugafeng, Qin Shao, and so on and so forth flashed through his head, causing him to become even paler. Not only were his wives and children on the Tianyuan continent, but there were also his parents as well as many friends who had gone through thick and thin with him. Jianqin did not leave the blood-red cloud. In the blink of an eye, he had remained in there for 3 days. During those 3 days, he had thought of many things and tried many things, but he was unable to do anything to the speck of red light in his soul. This was because the speck of red light had already fused with his soul, as if it had become a part of him. It was impossible to get rid of it. Without any other ideas, Jianqin could only awaken the sword spirits that had slumbered in the azulate swords for 18 years. Master, if we had recovered our energy, we would have been able to get rid of the problem in your soul without any difficulty. But right now, there's nothing we can do, Xing said helplessly. Master, there's actually no need for you to worry so much. As long as you don't suffer too much and keep your mind clear, there's no need to worry too much about your mind being affected. And before you deal with the problem in your soul, Xing and I can take turns protecting you. Once you show signs of being affected, we'll be able to wake you up in time, Jianqin said. Now that Jianqin's strength had increased, Xing and Qing Suo, who had not recovered their energy, could barely provide any help to Jianqin. As a result, Xing and Qing Suo fell silent after dealing with the crisis of the world. They entered seclusion to recover their strength as quickly as possible. Jianqin sighed gently. That's all we can do right now. Looks like I can only find a way to deal with the problem in my soul after I go to the Saints' world. At the same time, I need to go to a higher world if I want to continue increasing my chaotic body. As for my chaotic Naiden, it's the source of my power. It's not as fragile as my soul, so it won't be difficult to repair it. It'll just require a large amount of energy. Even if there are some things hidden in my chaotic Niden that I haven't completely refined, they'll all be slowly eliminated as my chaotic body progresses. The only thing that'll be affected is that I won't be able to use my full strength. Jianqin emerged from the blood-red cloud where he had stayed for 18 whole years. When he appeared in outer space, filled with resplendent starlight, he had completely recovered his composure. He acted like nothing had happened. Big brother, you finally emerged. As soon as Jianqin appeared before all the origin realm experts of this world, Xiao Ling cried out in excitement and threw herself into Jianqin's arms. Jianqin gently held Xiao Ling's shoulder with a smile. A sliver of undisguised love appeared in his eyes. Although Xiao Ling had lived for over 1,000,000 years, Jianqin still treated Xiao Ling as his own sister. When he was still weak, Xiao Ling had helped him through his difficulties more than once, saving his life. Now that his strength had reached the apex of this world, he would be the one to protect Xiao Ling in the future. Jianqin, have you broken through again? And 3 days ago, we suddenly felt an extremely powerful and violent aura. What happened? The sea goddess asked in concern. Her face immediately became rather stern towards the end of her sentence. Shangguan Mu, Yang Lai, Gui Hai Yi Dao, Feng Xiaotian, the four brothers Tai Ta, and all the other origin realm experts stared at Jianqin with interest. Jianqin was the pillar of support for this world. He was the only sovereign who could fend off the Spirit King. Whether his strength had increased once again would naturally affect everyone present, because the more powerful Jianqin became, the more likely they would be able to stand against him. If that happened, their world would be even more confident against the world of Forsaken Saints. On the other hand, if Jianqin's strength decreased due to some accident and he was no longer as strong as the Spirit King, their world would be at an extremely great disadvantage in the upcoming negotiations. It was even extremely likely that their world would be defeated when the war between the two worlds broke out again. Thank you for everyone's concern. After 18 years of seclusion, my strength has indeed increased. If I fight the Spirit King now, he won't be my opponent unless the Spirit King has formally reached godhood, Jianqin said calmly. Although he could only use 80% of his strength due to the crack in his chaotic Niden, he was still much more powerful than when he was at the 8th layer of the chaotic body. More importantly, breaking through to the 9th layer had not only strengthened his chaotic force, but his chaotic body as well. According to Jianqin's estimations, the 9th layer of the chaotic body had surpassed late reciprocity and reached godhood. The chaotic body at godhood was unbelievably powerful. No one below godhood could get through the defenses of his chaotic body. Even if he stood there without dodging, those below godhood would not be able to harm him at all. Although the Spirit King's battle prowess had reached godhood and could injure him, it was only a few superficial wounds. Everyone calmed down when they heard Jianqin's words. They all smiled at ease. Jianqin looked at Shangguan Mu. With a single step, he arrived before her. Looking at her beautiful face, Jianqin asked in guilt, "Has Aojin been well in the past few years?" Shangguan Mu met Jianqin's eyes. Ripples appeared in her eyes as she said calmly, "Aojin is very well. He just misses you a little. You can go see him when you're free." With that, Shangguan Mu turned around and left, returning to 3 Saint Island. Poseidon, Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, and Gui Hai Idao glanced past Jianqin and Shangguan Mu deeply. They seemed to smile slightly. Although Shangguan Aojin's true identity had not been exposed, the 4 of them had already discovered the truth through some clues. Poseidon was the first person to learn the truth. Chapter 1646. The Changyang Prefecture of Lore City had already become the most renowned clan in this world. It was not just on the Tianyuan continent, but even on the Beast God continent, the Sea Realm, and the Wasteland continent. There were even many people in the world of Forsaken Saints who had heard of the Lore City, Changyang Prefecture. This was because the status of the Changyang Prefecture in this world was equivalent to the sacred spirit hall in the world of Forsaken Saints. It represented the greatest power in the world because it was the home of the greatest human expert, Sovereign Jianqin. Even if the territory of the Changyang Prefecture was not large right now, and even if the strength of the Changyang Prefecture itself was not particularly great, as long as Jianqin was present, the Changyang Prefecture was the most revered clan in the world. There were even countless cultivators on the Tianyuan continent who took pride in being able to become an ordinary maid or guard in the Changyang Prefecture. This was because even an ordinary maid in the Changyang Prefecture possessed an extremely great status in the outside world. Very few people dared to provoke them. With the current reputation and strength of the Changyang Prefecture and the support of Jianqin, expansion was a piece of cake. They would not encounter any obstructions at all. However, due to Jianqin's instructions in the past, the Changyang Prefecture never expanded its territory despite its extraordinary strength and reputation. It remained in Lore City, occupying an extremely small piece of land in the eyes of many large clans and organizations. There was a landmark building in the Changyang Prefecture. It was shaped like a palace and was resplendent. It gave off an extremely majestic presence. Although it could not be compared to the imperial palaces of a few kingdoms in terms of size, no palace could compare to it in terms of majestic presence. At the very top of the palace was a huge gem the size of a human head. It absorbed the essence of the sun and moon, shining with a gentle and dazzling light. Whether it was day or night, the light enveloped the entire Changyang Prefecture. This palace was the divine temple in the hearts of everyone in the Changyang Prefecture. At the same time, it was also the most sacred place in the Changyang Prefecture. This was because this divine temple belonged to Jianqin. Without seeking Jianqin's opinion, this divine temple was built under the leadership of Yanglai by Yuntian and Changyang Ba. In their opinion, only such a divine temple was worthy of Jianqin's current status. Around the divine temple, there were a large number of guards in golden armor guarding this place with eager expressions. Every one of them had an unconcealable pride on their faces. It was as if they were proud to be able to guard this divine temple. However, the door of this divine temple was closed all year round. It would only be opened on a set day when there was a routine cleaning. Normally, no one could enter. Even the current Changyang Ku of Changyang Prefecture did not have the right to enter this divine temple at will. At this moment, in this tightly closed divine temple, there was a young man standing there silently. His eyes were filled with emotion as he looked around. On his back, there were two divine swords, one purple and one green. To no surprise, the young man was the master of the divine hall, Jianqin. I haven't been back for so many years. I never thought that even my home would become so unfamiliar. It's already very difficult to see the familiar shadow of the past. Jianqin stood in the divine temple and sighed. This unfamiliar environment involuntarily made a look of reminiscence of the past appear in his eyes. His home was still his home, but it had changed so much that the familiar scenery had become a memory. However, Jianqin did not have any objections to the changes here. He knew that this was all arranged by his parents, but inside he still hoped to see the home he was once familiar with. He wanted to see more of it so that he could remember it even more deeply because he knew that he would not be able to stay here for long. Today just so happened to be the day of the temple's routine cleaning. At this moment, dozens of beautifully dressed female servants walked in from outside the temple. After being checked by the golden-armored guards, they carefully opened the temple's door and walked in with respectful expressions. Whether it was guarding the divine hall or cleaning the divine hall, it was an extremely great honor in the Changyang clan. As a result, the attire of the female servants differed greatly from that of ordinary servants. Every single one of them wore the same attire, which was of the highest quality. It was quite expensive. Ah, there's actually someone inside. Ah. At this moment, the female servants who had just entered the divine temple to clean suddenly exclaimed. They all widened their eyes and stared at the back of Genshin, who was 30 meters away. They had been cleaning this divine temple for several years. Some of the older female servants had even been cleaning for more than 10 years. In their impression, this divine temple had always been empty. Except for routine cleaning, no one had entered. Even the head of the family in Chanyang Prefecture did not have the right to enter. However, at this moment, looking at the divine temple that was supposed to be empty in their impression, a person suddenly appeared. This immediately shocked all of them. "What, there's someone inside!" The female servant's exclamation was naturally heard by the guards in golden armor who were guarding outside the divine temple. Suddenly, all the guards' expressions changed. They had been guarding here closely. Except for the female servants who were cleaning, they had not seen anyone enter the divine temple. At this moment, suddenly hearing that there was someone else in the divine temple, these guards instantly realized that someone had sneaked into the divine temple. Without anyone's order, these guards emitted a strong killing intent and rushed into the divine temple aggressively. This divine temple was the residence of the human clan's supreme master, Genshin. Except for Genshin's wife and parents who could freely enter and leave, no one else had the right to step into the divine temple. Even the governor of Chanyang Prefecture would be punished if he stepped in without permission. How could he tolerate outsiders' blasphemy? As the guards in golden armor who were responsible for guarding this place, although they were also not allowed to step into the divine temple, there was always an exception. If someone sneaked into the divine temple, these guards in golden armor had the right to enter the divine temple to arrest them. The security in Chanyang Prefecture was so tight that even a fly could not fly through. In addition to these guards in the open, there were many more powerful warriors of the Saint Realm in the dark. They were always paying attention to the movements in Chanyang Prefecture. The abnormal behavior of these guards in golden armor was immediately detected by all the warriors of the Saint Realm who were hiding in the dark. Suddenly, figures flashed in Chanyang Prefecture. Dozens of figures moved at the same time, turning into afterimages as they quickly flew in the direction of the divine temple. Some people even took a step and crossed thousands of meters, appearing outside the divine temple as if they had teleported.